Good evening. Welcome to our March 4th School Board regular meeting. The time is now 6 p.m. The school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge we are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education in a safe, supportive environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Colonel Foster, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Colonel Foster. Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the roll?
Miss Charlie,
Here.
Mr. Shannon,
Here.
Colonel Cole is excused, Colonel Foster's on Zoom. Mr. Burgess is on Zoom.
I am here.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Here.
Mr. Doran,
Here.
Miss Julian.
Here.
Miss Maple,
Here.
Mrs. Hardy,
Here.
Mrs. Burnett.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Consent agenda items marked with an asterisk are considered routine items not requiring public discussion by the school board. Unless removed from the consent agenda, asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or a member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, the request must be made to a board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only a board member may remove an item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will then be adopted by one single motion. May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
A second?
Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the vote?
Colonel Foster,
Yes.
thank you. Miss Charlie,
Yes.
Mr. Shannon,
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Miss Maple,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
Yes.
Miss Julian,
Yes.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
Yes.
Mrs. Burnett.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Next up is public comments on reports and non-agenda items. During this section of the agenda, the school board welcomes public comments on non-agenda topics. This is an opportunity for community members to be heard. The board will note the topics, so no official actions will be taken. Topics may be referred to the administration for further research and future potential action. Board members will not respond to comments or questions made by the public. Concerned citizens should first discuss matters with the superintendent or designee. After the superintendent or designee has heard the concerns, they may be brought to the board. Individual students and district personnel may not be discussed in public testimony. Please contact the district office to route concerns about individual students or district personnel through the appropriate channels. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak on agenda items at the time the item is introduced for action and/or discussion. Once the agenda is published, testifiers should email or call the school board office by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting to sign up for public testimony. Students who have signed up in advance or are in the room wishing to testify will be called upon first, followed by members of the public who have signed up in advance in the order in which they have signed up. If time remains, anyone else in person will be invited to testify until the 1-hour time limit has been reached. A sign-up sheet is available in the boardroom before the start of the meeting for those who have not already signed up in advance. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each and should provide their first name, spell their last, and state their area of residence. Do we have any students in the room right now who wish to testify? Seeing none, we will go to our list. And first up, we have Amy Scraba. Hello, Ms. Scraba. If you can state your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Amy Skraba, S-K-R-A-B-A. I'm here tonight because I'm a parent. I'm a parent that voted to elect several of you to this school board. A parent who has applied to multiple charter schools in the last 6 years and never gotten a spot in one of them. A parent who up until 2 years ago chose to send my child to a private school. A parent who has made choices so that my children can go to a school that is the best fit for them. I'm that parent that you are trying to attract to your school district. A parent who has now chosen to enroll my children in the Fairbanks Northstar Borough instead of other options. I'm a parent that is in favor of options for our community. Pearl Creek Charter School is an option for our community. It is an option that was born out of the district telling us we need to get more students enrolled in our schools. As parents, we said, what can we do to attract more families to the FNSB schools? This is when an idea that had been floating around for a while came to our minds. What if we change the model of our school to a school that focuses on STEAM education? The first attempt was to propose a magnet school. On February 4th, the FNSB school board chose to close Pearl Creek, so we pivoted to a charter school. There was no reason to submit a charter application while Pearl Creek was still a neighborhood school, since Pearl Creek was still occupied and our charter application would be immediately rejected. This is a situation where you have to look at all the relevant circumstances. This situation is unique and unprecedented. What we are asking for is that you please allow the district admin to work with Pearl Creek APC and start the lease process. Please let this lease be drafted so we know the cost and so that the school board knows the cost in reviewing the charter. There is no fast tracking going on. Many hours have been spent by many people to get this charter application completed. There's a whole community of people who are willing to make this charter school a success. If that means helping the district empty out the building, then let's do it. We want to work together with the district throughout this process. Last night I heard mention of the hold harmless funding. Pearl Creek STEAM Charter School is a proposed elementary school with an emphasis on the integration of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics through an interdisciplinary and inquiry-based approach. The STEM education model is an approach to learning that integrates these disciplines across. It creates a holistic and interdisciplinary approach to learning. There are currently no schools focusing on STEAM education in the district. We are also aware that not every Pearl Creek student will attend the Pearl Creek Charter, and that is their choice. But we want every current Pearl Creek family to have that choice. A lottery is only needed if you have more applicants than you have seats for. If we get more applicants than we have seats for, that would be amazing. But if we do not, we won't need a lottery in the first year. That means that yes, those outer district students get spots in this school. Our school is a space where every child feels valued and supported, where diverse perspectives are celebrated, and where students are empowered to be the innovative problem solvers and stewards of tomorrow.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we'll have Danette Peterson. Good evening, Ms. Peterson. If you could state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Danette Peterson, P-E-T-E-R-S-O-N, Fairbanks. Maya Angelou said, "People will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." On February 4th, I testified before this board and asked you to ensure a soft landing for teachers at the schools that you voted to close. I asked you to ensure that impacted staff are easily onboarded in new positions, to ensure everyone feels valued and welcome even if at a different school, to begin the process of healing rather than causing more harm. We did right by our tenured displaced teachers. They were placed and have been notified of their new positions. The same cannot be said for our non-tenured teachers. I am disappointed they have been directed to go to the district's website and apply for positions they think they might be interested in. They are updating their resumes, answering preliminary questions. Some are finding that due to consolidation processes, information previously provided has been lost and they have to start entering their information from scratch. After that, they have to take time to prepare and attend interviews. These interviews have historically occurred during prep periods, after school hours, on weekends, and at times the interviews interfere with classroom instruction. When that happens, teachers use their personal time to attend interviews. Let's do better this round. They don't want to compete against colleagues for the same positions. Some of these teachers have taught in our district for 3 years with exemplary evaluations, and yet they are asked to jump through hoops as though they were new hires unknown to our students and families. There are only 11 non-tenured displaced teachers, and I believe we have 3 in the room right now, and I please ask them to stand. We must do better by them. Of the 36 displaced classroom teachers, at most 22 are returning next year. How these educators are treated will determine if they return or leave our district. Education author Dr. Brad Johnson says, since the classroom teacher is more important to the success of a student than the programs, technology, or curriculum, that means teacher morale is more important than the program's curriculum or technology. I again urge you to show these teachers the compassion and respect that they are due through actions and not just words. We are painfully aware of the national shortage of qualified teachers and the vacancies our district is facing. Consider how the decisions being made are making our teachers feel and how that will impact our students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Pepper McFarland. Hi, Ms. McFarland. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Pepper McFarland, McFarland. 2 things. 1, thank you for continuing to support our gay students. Please do not give in to that stuff. Please, these kids need us. They need us to be here. They need us to support them. We're saving their lives. Don't give in to that. Number 2, more about budget. I have an idea. If we have lost so many students that we don't need so many schools and we don't need so many teachers, maybe we don't need so much administration. Do we really need 3 superintendents? We're asking teachers to do more with less. Here's 35 kids in a classroom. You can teach that, go for it. Maybe everybody else can work harder too. I think 1 assistant and superintendent's probably the cost of 2 teachers. Class size matters. Please, please do what you can to bring class size down. We cannot teach 35 kids in a classroom. The little kids, I'm sure they can't teach 25 kids in a classroom. We're missing some. Some of those kids are slipping through the cracks because we cannot get to them all every day. And that's what they need. They need us to interact with them, to know we care about them, to notice, oh, you didn't get that, let me help you. We need class sizes down. Please do what you can to bring it down. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We will have Heidi Rader. Good evening, Ms. Rader. If you could state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, Heidi Rader, Rader, Fairbanks. Thank you all for your service on the board. I'm here to advocate for the Pearl Creek Charter School, which we're really excited about and is a new school. I'm here because I've realized I can't keep taking things for granted that I care about. I do care about the community at Pearl Creek, the kids, the staff, the teachers, and the parents. I'm impressed by the work that Pearl Creek parents, potential parents, staff, and teachers are putting in to a sustainable plan for a charter school. It's well thought out, it's thorough. I want to join in that effort and continue working towards a common goal. At this point, we're asking for a few things. We'd like the board to start the lease process so we have a firm number that we can incorporate into our application. We're not asking the school board to fast track anything. We simply would like the board to consider the Pearl Creek Charter application within 60 days in adherence with the statutory timeline. We advocated for keeping Pearl Creek open as a magnet school. When the decision was made to close Pearl Creek, the parents and advocates for Pearl Creek immediately shifted gears to put together a charter school application within like 2 weeks. Because October 1st was the deadline for the charter school and the decision to close the school was made in mid-February, we were not able to meet that deadline. We were, however, able to complete the charter application quickly because of the effort and the teamwork already established and in place for the magnet school. We'd like to work with the school board to move through the process quickly and to be open this fall. What we see in the data from the school district is that Pearl Creek is one of the least expensive schools in the district, and based on the school district's own published FY25 budget, salaries, facilities, and operating expenses, Pearl Creek has been a net positive to the district. When we asked the district if they based the $1.7 million gain from the closure of Pearl Creek as an actual expense to the district, the answer from executive leadership was no. We don't agree that this charter will take money from the school district. Rather, as a charter, it cannot run on a deficit. Pearl Creek was self-sustainable as a community school. It would have been as a magnet, and we hope and plan for it to be as a charter. We are working to outline clear data-driven numbers and would appreciate the same from the school district. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to working with you through this application process.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we'll have Stacy Kennedy. Good evening, Ms. Kennedy. If you could state your name, spell your last, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Stacy Kennedy, Kennedy. Good evening. I sit before you tonight not only as the director of Northstar College, but as a former principal who understands the difficult decisions you face regarding school consolidation. 3 short years ago, I sat in the same seat as principal of Anderson Elementary, facing the closure of that great school. I understand the pain and anxiety that accompanies such decisions. However, in that instance, the consolidation was logical. Anderson, a K-2 school, was operating far below capacity, struggling to fill teaching positions and meet daily substitute needs. Consolidating with Crawford Elementary, the grade 3 through 6 school on base, made practical sense, ensuring program continuity and efficient resource allocation under one roof. I trusted the district's leadership recommendation to consolidate Anderson Elementary because it was based on sound logic and data. A very similar process took place this year again with the 5 elementary school consolidation recommendations presented to you a few weeks ago. These recommendations are based on well-researched data, including but not limited to building capacity, student enrollment, and attentiveness to resource allocations. It's perplexing to me why our district administration's research, planning, and forethought would be so easily dismissed. Tonight, I'm sitting here due to an unforeseen statement made during a recent work session regarding the closure of Northstar College. Let's be clear, closing Northstar College is not a recommendation of the district's administration's proposed budget. That alone should draw caution in proceeding. It's not logical to our district's fiscal challenges. Northstar College is a proven success. It provides a unique and invaluable middle college program, offering students pathways to opportunity, economic mobility, and community prosperity. This return on investment is immeasurable. The longstanding partnership with UAF benefits many schools within our district community currently. The ideas of expanding charter and satellite schools, not even yet in existence, while closing Northstar College is illogical. These potential expansions further strain our limited resources, our workforce, and will lose focus on already established innovative programs throughout the school district. I understand the budgetary pressures you face. However, I implore you to recognize that closing Northstar College is a short-sighted solution that will have long-term negative consequences. You are not simply cutting a high school. You're cutting off opportunities for our students and hindering the economic future of our community. I urge you to invest in the continued success of Northstar College, as well as listen to the guidance and recommendations of our district's experienced leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have April Monroe. I don't see her here. Is she on Zoom, Ms. Richardson? No? Okay. We will go then to Zoom for Drew Koss. You don't see him either? Okay. How about Carolyn Leffler? Hello, if you could state your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
Carolyn Loeffler, Loeffler, and I live in Fairbanks. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight, and I commiserate with Mr. Burgess's comments from last night's work session. The school closure process has been incredibly emotional and taxing for this entire community. After 5 years of slashing programs and closing schools, the plan to close an additional 5 elementary schools was unimaginable. As a parent, advocating for public schools is like repeatedly screaming SOS to a Coast Guard ship in nearby waters, but it refuses to acknowledge that we're sinking. I am losing faith in our state leadership, and more recently in our local leadership as well. We cannot continue to take the same actions and expect different results. I understand that our district's projected budget situation is dire. What I don't understand is the following. 1, the request for and the consideration of only one plan to balance the budget was severely limited to virtually non-existent public engagement or feedback processes. 2, the district's refusal to substantiate the projected costs and savings of said plan with actual detailed numbers, data, and definitions of assumptions used. 3, the unwillingness of the board to consider that the one plan they were presented, is not the best solution for our community's needs. As elected leaders, you should be open to requesting more information in order to re-examine decisions made, and moreover, open to changing course when presented with new data. And lastly, the utter lack of transparency and due process from the school district and the board. Right now, Two Rivers and Pearl Creek are mobilizing with community-designed and driven charter applications. They are rigorous, thorough, well-supported, and organized, although they are not where we want to be. We are building and advocating for something we believe our community needs and wants. Please read our applications. Please give our ideas due process, rather than dismissing them on the formality of an October 1st deadline that was impossible to meet, given the buildings were occupied, or a simple "we can't afford it." Maybe we truly can't afford to do anything new or different, but we certainly can't afford to do more of the same. Our financial assessments do not currently support the district's financial claims. If the district and the school board are concerned about the financial impact of a new charter, they should sit down with the members of the Pearl Creek community with the detailed numbers and assumptions to substantiate such a claim. We are your constituents, your neighbors, your advocates, and your friends. If there is information that we don't have that is preventing us from seeing the whole picture, please engage with us. Please lean in. It's what we're trying to do with you. In the meantime, Pearl Creek has 130 people actively engaged in the planning and advocacy process, parents, teachers, researchers, lawyers, CPAs, administrators, that are ready to do the work to stand up a STEAM magnet or charter school this fall. It is my hope that the district recognizes the huge opportunity it has at hand to try something new.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have Miranda Hacker. Hello, Ms. Hacker. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Miranda Hacker, spelled Hacker. I'm 18 years old and I live in University West. I am a proud graduate of Northstar Middle College's class of 2024, our very first official graduating class. Tonight, I'm here to share just how much Northstar has meant to me and continues to shape my future. To give you some background, I'm originally from Talkeetna but have lived here since early 2020. Before Northstar, I attended Hutch. As a first-generation college student, I lacked the resources and guidance from my family to navigate the college process. Truthfully, I never thought college was an opportunity for me. That all changed when I discovered Northstar. Initially, I saw it as a rare opportunity. One I had to take advantage of, even if I wasn't sure I could afford future college semesters. At the very least, I knew I'd be exposed to intellectually stimulating coursework. Northstar offers access to all UAF courses and is incredibly inclusive, allowing students to explore not only traditional college courses, but also trade programs at CTC, such as welding, automotive, allied health, and our airframe and power plant program. I was lucky to have great counselors at Hutch, but their focus was often on urgent crises: mental health, housing insecurity, food instability. They didn't always have the time to guide students through college preparation. In fact, I didn't even know what FAFSA was until I was in Northstar. If the school district plans to cut funding to Northstar, they must make a commitment to prepare students for higher education, whether that be college or trade school. Northstar provides a critical jumpstart to students' futures. Students who come in as juniors can now graduate with an associate's degree in hand. And beyond the academic opportunities, the support system is unparalleled. I cannot count the number of times I walked into Kristen Kelly's office in tears. She always listened, gave amazing advice, and made sure I was left with the tools I needed to succeed in my university classes. Because of Northstar, I also had the opportunity to start working in UA Human Resources at just 16 years old. Later, I transitioned into the more student-facing registrar's office. These experiences have been invaluable to me, ones that would not have ever been an option had I not joined this program. It set me up for strong administrative work and has given me lots of skills. College is hard, Northstar is hard, but what makes it special is that it provides the necessary support to bridge the gap between high school and post-secondary education. Northstar has changed my life. Let's make sure it keeps changing others. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we're going to go to Zoom, and we should have David Wunderlich. Mr. Wunderlich, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. State your name, spell your last. You have 3 minutes.
My name is David Wunderlich, Wonderlich, and I was part of the 2024 graduating class for Northstar College. In my junior year of high school at Lathrop, I was taking Calc AB, and there was a very small class, approximately 12 people. 8 of those people were seniors, and there was 4 of us that were juniors. At the end of the year, we were told that we would have to take a bus to West Valley to take Calc BC, and there was a total of 8 students eligible. This was a very difficult decision, and my counselor told me I probably just shouldn't take a math class for my senior year. I wanted to keep taking college credit, and I wanted to pursue a greater education, but the ability was not before me. Furthermore, over the summer, talking to the people that would be in the Calc BC class at West Valley, many of them said they weren't interested and they wanted to skip a math class for their senior year and just take easy classes instead. This was unacceptable to me. I really wanted to pursue my greater education, and there was no opportunities handed to me. So, I signed up for Northstar College. Initially, I was horrified of the experience. Taking college classes as a senior, it was terrifying, and I was not mentally prepared for the challenge. The counselors in the program eased me into the college experience and prepared me for what higher education would be like. I had the opportunity to take Calc 2, which replaced the BC credit, along with 20 other credits. This meant that when it came time to apply for college, I had a head start ahead of everybody. I applied for Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, and I transferred in 47 credits from all the classes I took. This gave me the standing as a sophomore and set me ahead of all of my peers. Without Northstar College, it's not entirely likely I would have here. Furthermore, I wouldn't have the standing that I have today. Having this advantage allowed me to get sophomore status, which means I have room in my schedule to double major, triple major, or complete a master's in the same 4 years it would take to graduate my college program. Furthermore, I have a younger brother in the Northstar College program right now named Nathan Wunderlich. If Northstar College was closed, he would be forced to go back to Lathrop High School and complete AP classes, which would grant him less credit than the normal Northstar College program would. Overall, I am extremely grateful for the program, and I would not be where I am today without it. I was extremely nervous for college, considering not leaving the state and just staying in Alaska to finish my education and taking a couple AP classes my senior. but Northstar College prepared me for the future that I want, and now I'm very happy with where I am.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have Adia Cotter. Hello, Ms. Cotter. If you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Adia Cotter, Cotter, and I live in the McGrath area. When my oldest son started kindergarten, he was at Joy and it was half day. And it was a pretty big pain in the butt to have to go get him every day and take him to daycare. But that school was conveniently located between my and my husband's place of employment. So that kind of helped a little bit. When Joy closed in 2022, I think that was the year, my youngest son was redistricted to Weller Elementary. Weller Elementary is an excellent school, has a rock star principal, great staff, but is in the complete opposite direction of any purpose that I have during the day. Definitely not in my neighborhood. It made it pretty inconvenient to have to go drop off lunches, pick somebody up when they're sick, go to school functions during the day. But my husband and myself had lots of flexibility, so we were able to make it work. And he was only there for a year. He was there for 5th grade and then went to middle school. There were families in our neighborhood that were not so lucky with all that flexibility. I know that there were quite a few that that was kind of a deal breaker, and getting to school in the morning was pretty difficult. Weller started, I believe, maybe an hour later than Joy, and so the morning routine was certainly disrupted for many families. My son, being a 5th grader, was able to manage it because he was a little bit older, but I know that the kindergartners, 1st graders, 2nd graders in the neighborhood had a hard time. They couldn't just walk to the school bus by themselves in the morning. I would be interested in hearing your thoughts about making amendments or changes or some sort of waiver to the out-of-area attendance policy when considering your redistricting this time around. I took a look at it at the website, and I certainly will comment. Your charts and your logic there kind of reminded me of the GRE. It was a little bit hard for my brain to dissect, so I got to spend a little bit more time thinking about it. But, and I know that, you have policies that govern this process, but I urge you to think about some of those families that are being impacted this time around that maybe don't have the resources to be flexible enough to go to one of those schools that you're proposing. And if there's a way that you could build some choice in there, we're all about choice, that makes it easier for vulnerable families or families that need more flexibility so that going to school is not a deal breaker, I would highly recommend that you think about that. I know you got a lot going on. I know you got a lot of things to do, and this is just one of them. But speaking as a parent who kind of had to go through it but was successful, I'm really concerned about families that may not be. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have Peter Miller. Good evening, Mr. Miller. If you could state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Peter Miller, Petermiller. Thank you for your service and for listening to me today. I've listened to the budget meetings, looked at the balancing act, and heard the various perspectives of board members. I'd like to especially thank Mr. Doran. I think that your long-term experience, insights as an educator in the district are invaluable. You've shown wisdom, open-mindedness, creativity, and an in-depth knowledge of our school system, and equanimity, an especially difficult virtue to maintain during these difficult times. I understand the strong emotions of the board as we best try to steward a young generation into the healthy, happy problem solvers that we need to thrive as a community. I think with the information that has been presented to you and that the format it has been presented in may be convenient, but also limiting, and I would urge you to challenge some of the assumptions built into the model. When new data emerges, it's important to incorporate it into decision-making, even if it challenges initial predictions or even past decisions. The school board administration presented a model estimated savings from Pearl Creek based on a projected enrollment trends and redistributing students to other schools. The projected savings of $1.7 million relied on largely eliminating administrative and service costs to Pearl Creek. However, recent surveys conducted by the Pearl Creek community, a more reliable data source, revealed flaws in the district's model. As somebody who has worked in natural sciences but also trained in social research science methods, I can tell you that direct survey data is a more reliable model than historical trends. Another figure that I think is flawed within the Balancing Act is the cost associated with opening a new charter school. The assumption that there is a complete loss when adding a charter school to the district is an overly simplified way of looking at it. Much of that money that you are saying will be lost on the revenue side will also be taken out of the expenditure side. However, that isn't reflected in the Balancing Act. Those teachers who you would be paying to move to other schools will no longer be on your payroll. With the enrollment capacity of Pearl Creek, this would be around 22 full-time teachers, eliminating a cost of roughly $2 million for the district on the expenditure side. They will be paid by the charter's BSA instead. To pay teachers who are still public school teachers, providing services to students who are still public school students, and still a part of our district. This money is not in fact leaving the district. This isn't reflected in the Balancing Act. I would suggest that at a minimum you include on the expenditure side a reduction of 22 full-time teaching positions in order to more accurately show the net effect of that impact. I still believe that Pearl Creek is worth saving in whatever capacity is possible. I detailed my background previously and spoke as to the unique culture and communities that form within schools, properties that are not transposed but lost when you shut down a school. Many of you have said that you think the proposal is great and would do it somewhere else, but as Dr. Meinert has said, these efforts are most successful when community-driven. You can't impose them. If you are serious about looking into magnet schools, I don't see a more low-hanging fruit where literally thousands of hours of highly skilled labor has been dedicated to creating this model. The value of that volunteer labor alone is probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you continue to deliberate, I would urge you to look critically beyond the numbers you are given and don't lose sight of the complexity and nuance of humans that exist.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we'll have Gail McBride. Hello, Ms. McBride. If you could state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
Gail McBride, MCBRIDE with Moms for Liberty. The President's EOs on DEI and gender have caused the expected disagreements as seen in the newspaper articles. This is an opportunity for all of us to clarify these issues that have become extremely divisive. I would like to suggest returning to a look at first principles. Our Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal. Of course, there's much more to this, but my intent is to find a common place of agreement. The implementation of DEI policies have morphed into a divisive and distorted administering of the principle of equality. The replacement of equality with equity has resulted in more division and disparities than intended. Gender policies have attempted to escape reality to the place where our very own schools' children are taught there is no defined male or female and are allowed to pretend to be animals, with other students being punished for their natural attention to it. The district's DEI report by RMG Consulting is a perfect example of the divisive ideologies that has been rejected. The people of our nation have rejected these ideologies. It is now time to return to the intended business of schools. Education, not social engineering. We can easily work together in our unique community to provide the best education for all students, meeting individual needs without hiring quotas focusing on race or sex, but lifting each student to their unique potential. Our goal in eliminating these divisive ideologies and focusing on education will result in a more harmonious environment that will draw us all together toward a single goal. The district will experience success as we all work together toward simply educating our children. And I'd like to invite you all to the Noel Ween Library Conference Room Saturday, March 15th at 2 p.m. We will be showing SEL 101. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we will have Sharon Hansen. Is Sharon here? I thought I saw her earlier.
On Zoom.
Oh. Ms. Hansen, are you on Zoom?
Yes.
Can you state your name, spell your last? You have 3 minutes.
Hi, am Sharon Hansen, Hansen. I'm in Fairbanks. First off, thank you, board members. I recognize and appreciate all of your energy and effort that you've been putting forth in this terrible process that you have to go through making a budget. I just finished a 2-year term on the APC at Boreal Sun. I'm also the chair of the nonprofit associated with the school, and my testimony is mine alone, not part of my school. I have concerns, whether it's intentional or not. I feel that in a lot of the work sessions, the school board meetings, some of the community forums, that the message has been that charters have a fixed PTR. My concern with having that be the focus is that it distracts from the reason we have charters in our district. Charters provide an alternative educational model. When we talk about making our neighborhood schools having families want to go to them more, and using an example of, let's have a lantern walk at Ann Ween, it really is distracting from the whole concept that a charter school provides an alternative educational model. And I understand in your budget process, if there's funds outside the BSA, that not all of that will go to charters. Charters are lumped together. I understand that some of the charters are much more longstanding and they have a lot more of a financial stability than the newer charter schools. I am going to advocate for education funding. I fly to Juneau on my own dime on Friday. I have 10 appointments with legislators all of Monday. I'm going to talk about inflation impacting charter schools as well as our neighborhood schools, how we are being pitted against one another. I want to talk about impact aid, and I want to talk about keeping local control over the approval of charters. One last thing is that I am very concerned. I've taken steps to protect my children's data. I ask that you not take laptops for teachers into the budget tool. Please talk to your district IT people. Find the reason why it is not okay to take that money out for those laptops. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That brings us to the end of our sign-up list. Is there anybody else out who would wish to testify at this time? Yeah, absolutely. Come forward, please. Hi, if you can state your name, spell your last, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Haley Essig, E-S-S-I-G. I wanted to address a few of the comments that you guys made in your work session last night. So Dr. Meinert stated that the first line of the state statute requires local school districts to create a policy for charter schools. Based on this, the argument was made that the local application deadline policy might override the state statute requiring a 60-day review. However, isn't it the district's responsibility to ensure its policies align with state law? A district policy should never supersede a state-mandated timeline. Ms. Julian also raised concerns about wanting more details on the charter school's budget, including the assumptions built into different scenarios. We are more than willing to provide that information. In return, we ask for the same transparency regarding the district's stated $2.5 million cost of keeping Pearl Creek open as a charter school. What specific assumptions were made in that calculation? The operating costs of a charter school are covered by the charter itself, so are these additional costs related to the administrative expenses that exceeded the 4% funding to the district? If so, how much more? Because when we asked, the only response we received was a lot more. Imagine if our charter application simply stated, it's a lot. That would not be acceptable, nor should it be for the district. If the district is counting loss of BSA funding due to students choosing the charter, that's not a cost, it's a shift in enrollment. The public deserves a clear and transparent breakdown of these figures. You also discussed the hold harmless provision cost impact would be closer to $4 million, since the same school would remain in the building. But as Dr. Meinert himself stated, the district will vacate the building in May, and the Pearl Creek Charter will be responsible for moving in its own infrastructure by August. This, along with a new student body, a new governing APC, and a STEAM-focused curriculum, all make this a distinctly new school. If these factors don't qualify it as such, tell us what would. I heard several times last night that reviewing this charter now would be fast-tracking the process. But let's be clear, this is not about fast-tracking, it's about following the 60-day state statute. This proposal is not rushed. A plan for a Pearl Creek STEAM magnet school has been in development for over a year. It was introduced to the board last year and aggressively pursued this year. The narrative that this is a last-minute effort by the Pearl Creek community is simply false and dismisses the extensive research and work already completed. If this were a last-minute scramble, how do you think we managed to submit a fully developed charter application just weeks after your vote to close the school? We couldn't apply for a charter while Pearl Creek was still an open operating neighborhood school. We all share a common goal, increasing enrollment in this district. We have put forward a strong, well-developed plan to do exactly that. We are ready to collaborate with you to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify at this time? Come forward. Yeah, absolutely. If you could kindly state your name, spell your last, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jessica Iglesias. I live in North Pole, and I wasn't prepared to speak. I came a little late, so I don't know if this was already stated, but first I want to thank administration for hiring a principal at North Pole Elementary. It made my job easier since my school's closing. I'm not going to cry, but and I want to thank you guys for placing the tenured teachers. It's been really, really stressful. And we've just all been up in the air. I've worked here 15 years. I spent my first 4 years with pink slips every year with uncertainty. I thought my 15th year I would be okay. Sorry. I have a new kindergartner who loves school. I'm super excited for him to go to North Pole E now that we know. But I come to you talking about our non-tenured teachers, the 16 who were dropped a bomb on them, and then the person who made that decision left, went on vacation. There's nobody to call. There's nobody to talk to. They go on AppleTrack. Their stuff isn't there. They have to find their documents again. They have to upload again like they're brand new. They're telling stories about interviewing process. They said when they came to this district, they would interview at different schools with principals, and principals would ask them for documents, and they said, I put it in AppleTrack. They're like, well, we can't see it. So they had to personally email all the documents to the principals so they could see them. What is AppleTrack for? Like, I haven't used it in 15 years, so I really don't know what its updates are now. But these are the real stories that are coming from our tenured. And we always talk about recruiting and retention. At this point, what do we really care about? It seems to me like we only care about recruiting, because you have teachers here. You have teachers who are invested in our community. You have teachers who are giving free time in the afternoon. I just came from Crochet Club, where me and my friend, Mrs. Freeman, do Crochet Club after school for kids who are interested in learning. We did Sewing Club at the beginning of the school year. We're planning our party on Thursdays. That's why I was a little late. I was getting them party supplies. But you have people who want to stay, and we are slapping them in the face, telling them, please apply again. And unfortunately, people are stressed out. I mean, a teacher came to me this morning crying, and I'm like, I am so sorry this is happening. I never thought you guys would have to go and apply for your job again when there's open positions. There are literally open positions. They should not have to go and through the hiring process, do AppleTrack again, find all their documents, which HR should have, and do all that again. It's so unfair, and this isn't how we treat people who we want to keep around when there's not exactly people lining up to teach our children, and who we have people already here who care about our kids. So thank you, and please smooth this process out.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify at this time? Seeing none, do we have one? No? Okay, seeing none, public testimony is now closed. At this time, the board will also take a 5-minute recess. And we are back from recess, and we will continue on with our agenda items going into our possible Borough Assembly report. Ms. Richardson, is Ms. Reeves Ramos on Zoom?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening, Ms. Reeves Ramos. The floor is yours for your Assembly report.
Okay, I apologize if I go in and out. I'm in Dillingham and the internet service is not fabulous. So I really only have one thing to update you guys on, because I think that the last time I was before you was only 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. But we did approve the capital improvement project list at our assembly meeting last week. And the update I need to provide to you is that, to my understanding, the next time that there is a capital improvement project funded that includes school projects, maintenance projects, is 2028. And that's the end of my update.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves Ramos. Give me a second and see if there's any questions from the board. Is there anything? Mrs. Hardy.
Not a question. Just thank you for your advocacy in that meeting. I know that you tried very hard to get district projects on the KIP, and I appreciate all the effort that went into trying to make that happen.
Mrs. Julian.
Thank you. I do have a question. So you said that the next time that a school board or a school project is on the list, I just want to make sure I caught that. Was it 2028?
Yep, 2028.
Okay. Do you have any, and I've listened that there was some, I listened to the testimonies and the deliberation from the dais that evening, and it sounded like there was a request that when we submit projects, we submit smaller projects and more precision. Is that, can you personally answer that from your capacity? Is that something that you'd like us to see, like, that might help us in getting some of our school projects prioritized in the future?
So I've got to be very careful. I mean, personally, yes, and I do think that, and I hope, let's say this, I hope that there's going to be more communication between the administration and the district, and I have heard that one of the communication pieces to kind of fix this system is to hopefully get projects broken down into smaller, more prioritized chunks, you know, rather than, for example, the one that sticks out is on the KIP. I want to say it was like 3 million or 4 million for different projects at North Pole High School related to the heating system. And then, as we all know, last year we had to fund, or we chose, not had, I mean, we had to, but we chose to fund 2 million to replace the boilers due to an emergent situation. So kind of breaking what I've heard and what my understanding is that breaking down those projects into specific items that can be prioritized rather than having large overarching vague projects is what's hopefully gonna help fix this problem.
Mr. Dorn.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves, for being here with us tonight and sharing. As you mentioned, the next school project on the KIP is out several years. So just an observation that you might take back to the borough, and also talking to Dr. Minert as our administration on this side. I'm just thinking how, if we are in a position in looking at schools for closure over the next several years, that perhaps that conversation, if there is something structural that's in that we have that conversation between the borough and the district that might actually move up the consideration that would impact whether we would consider that school for closure or not. If that makes sense. But it tends to be we come at it after the fact, and because and thanks to the borough, the mayor, the assembly, to look at this more proactively, and as we look at it proactively, how we do that together.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves Ramos, for your report, and we hope you have a good time in Dillingham and wherever it is you're off to tomorrow. Moving on in our agenda, we will move on to advisory member reports and comments, and we will go down here to Mr. Shannon.
Not too much to report. At our last regional student council meeting, we had a few board members come down, spoke with the students at sort of roundtable discussions. I feel like those went pretty well. Other than that, though, we don't have a whole lot going on at the moment. We are still planning on doing our middle school workshop to get middle schoolers that are coming into high school hyped up about student council and advocacy for themselves and their peers. That'll happen at West Valley. And other than that, like I said at the previous meeting, North Pole is still looking at hosting the next fall conference for the Alaska Association of Student Governments. We will be waiting until new principal comes in for the high school so we can coordinate with her with how we want to get that all set up and if that's something we'd be interested in. But other than that, that's about all I have. Thanks.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none, Ms. Charlie?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge all the students and staff and teachers that were able to take so many kids out to the start of the Iditarod yesterday. I wasn't able to be there in person, but I really appreciated all the pictures and the warm weather and the signs that they made yesterday. I also wanted to mention that FNA is having our annual meeting this Friday, March 7th at the Tribal Hall, and the meeting is going to start at 6 o'clock. I also want to announce our FNA JOM program will be hosting the JOM basketball tournament at Tanana Middle School starting next Monday. We have about 200 students signed up so far, and 128 kids from the district and 70 from surrounding villages and communities, 3rd grade to 12th grade. So it's going to be 3 days of basketball at Tanana. We're planning for our FNA annual potlatch, which is going to be held March 15th at 5 o'clock, also at the Tribal Hall. Basi.
Any questions for Ms. Charlie? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Charlie. Colonel Foster, do you have anything for us this afternoon?
Yeah, nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Foster. Going into board committee reports. Do we have committee reports from board members at this time? Mrs. Julian.
Okay, thank you, President Burnett. Yes, I have a budget committee report, and we had our final meeting this session on the 26th of February. All were present except one member. I want to thank the parents, community members, representatives from Fairbanks Native Association, educators, support staff, and administration for serving on the Fairbanks Northstar Borough School District Board Budget Committee. I also want to thank Mr. Doran, who served alongside me as the co-chair and also as the chair for the first 2 meetings before I joined as the chair midway through. The committee represented a diversity of viewpoints and perspectives, and just to give the public a little knowledge about what the board budget committee does is it is to provide for the board stakeholder engagement and participation in the processes related to the business of the committee. The budget committee operating guide defines how the committee will be run, and we have policies and administrative regulations that govern the budget committee. But in a sense, the budget committee is an advisory board that helps us with what's at hand right now, which is their budget. The board budget committee was provided the fiscal year 26 proposed budget and the fiscal year 26 balancing act prior to the meeting. The goals of the meeting included to review budget assumptions, of which they are a $16 million deficit. The revenue assumptions in that $16 million deficit include a $60 million local contribution in fiscal year 26, a BSA equivalent of a 680 increase, which would be 6,640 total BSA, so that's per pupil funding. Projected enrollment of 11,626 students, or a 1.5% decrease. The expense assumptions, and I want to make sure that this is stated for the public as well, that we reviewed is a PTR, so a pupil to teacher ratio, so that's target class size increase of 2.5 students across the board, taking elementary from 25 to 27.5, middle school from 28 to 30.5, and high school from 31 to 33.5. Reducing high school counselors by 2.5 full-time employees, reducing district admin by $500,000, subsidizing transportation at $2 million, outsourcing shift custodians, and closure of Pearl Creek Elementary, Midnight Sun Elementary, and Two Rivers Elementary. And that's how the majority of that $16 million deficit has been proposed by the administration. Each committee member was asked to submit a budget scenario and a justification of which we are still receiving feedback, and I want to thank the finance team for helping to gather that feedback and get it back to us. So during the meeting, the committee members shared their perspectives on the budget balancing act scenarios. This is not an inclusive report, but these are some of the high-level things that kept coming up in that committee feedback. So for revenue, the majority of the budget committee advised us to budget revenue based on the recommended fiscal year 26 revenue projections that have been put forth by the administration, to not balance the budget on anything other than what's been put forth. There's also a consensus around using any funds above the budget, above that amount that we receive. So if we get any additional funds, that budget committee said lower PTR, lower PTR, lower PTR. Hopefully bring it back down to previous year levels. So even go lower than where we are right now. Just put everything at PTR is what they said. The committee feedback on expenditures. So elementary, there was a strong desire from the committee to lower PTR now, not wait for new money, but do what we can now and make additional cuts, but not cuts at the elementary level to lower PTR in elementary. Things said like elementary has taken the brunt of it. Somebody said it on the one of our committee members actually used the visual of if you shoot yourself in the foot now, you're going to walk with a limp the rest of your life. And I thought that was important to really understand. If we are pushing PTR and class sizes up in our elementary, somebody at the testimony today said as well that we're losing some kids. So let's, to the extent possible, lower PTR in elementary now. Elementary associates was discussed at length as well. Elementary and middle school librarians, there was a consensus to keep them. They're critical, especially to the Alaska Reads, meeting the framework around the Alaska Reads and the support that those library associates and middle school librarians give. Barnett, there were quite a few people that said reduce the teachers at Barnett to match district-wide PTR. High school and middle school, lower PTR as well, but the priority was for elementary. However, there were notes there was comments made about high school PTR, and when we increased that, the unintended consequences of not being able to give the amount of electives and the amount of AP courses. And so consider that around high school PTR. There were a few people that said and have given feedback around cutting the 2 high school librarians that's in the budget slide tool right now. Northstar College, there was a lot of discussion about it should have been considered during school closures, not necessarily when we're discussing it now, and so there was a lot of support of keeping that. Best Satellite, strong support for investing at best satellites at both the Two Rivers and the Midnight Sun Elementary. And the justification there was that we don't need that many students to break even with those investments, and it was about 80 students. And again, thank you to the administration for getting those numbers in real time for us during the meeting. Charters, it was a unanimous consensus of do not add another charter right now. Also consider the location of a charter or any schools of choice in the future based on where our borough is growing. Staffing challenges were cited as one of the reasons that really hadn't been discussed prior, but and we heard it here tonight, the vacancy rates that we have in our teachers and the principal from Anderson Crawford spoke. She's a member of the committee and discussed that right now, she can't get enough teachers to fill the PTR targets that we've given her right now. So that PTR out there is about 28.5 as it currently stands. And that if we expand our footprint by adding an additional school, we will draw on our limited resources, and that limited resource is our primarily our teachers. So that was an interesting perspective that really hadn't been discussed prior. Of course, the fiscal challenges were cited as rationale, as well as our decreased enrollment. Market saturation was also discussed a little bit, and that was around the conversation of perhaps look to North Pole, which is an area that's growing for our next school of choice. Decrease the transportation subsidy. So the committee agreed that with the governor including transportation in his recommended budget, that there was a consensus around this board lowering the transportation subsidy. However, there was not a consensus around how much to lower it. And there was consensus around increasing the cuts to district administration as well. Other ideas that came forth from the budget committee thus far: increasing our rental fees to build more revenue. So I'm looking forward to that presentation tonight. Investing in our employees' well-being. And this came from our Mrs. Charlie at the end of the dais here from FNA. Our teachers need to feel like they are valued. And Mrs. Charlie brought forward some really interesting ideas that are done at FNA, and perhaps we could do some here. So good ideas, good conversation around that. And then there was a discussion around closing another school, possibly 2 next year, discussions around Hutch, converting it to a VOTEC center and expanding CTE pathways to increase enrollment, moving middle schools to our high schools because of the capacity at our high schools, moving to central models for support staff or specials or SPED. So these are just ideas that are coming forth from that committee now that aren't reflected on the budget sliding tool. So thank you.
Any questions from board members? Mr. Dorn.
Maybe just a request, because there's a lot of information in there, and a lot of it is individual or small bits and pieces that are all important for us to consider. Could we have that sent through the chair, have that sent to all the board members so we have it prior to our work session on the 17th? And knowing that, these are a lot of different ideas, not necessarily consensus on those, on many of them. Some there were, a lot there weren't, but just on the table, it would be good to have.
Yeah. Mrs. Julian, if you could send that email to Carm, and Carm can get it out to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other reports from board members? Mrs. Hardy.
Diversity Committee met last week, and they were able to cross off one of their priorities. They'd set a couple of goals or priorities for this year, and it was around principal hiring. And from the diversity lens, we had Ms. LaPlante come and talk about how we go about hiring principals, and that was a great presentation a while ago. And then we've had a couple committee members participate as diversity members on some of the most recent principal hirings, and their experience through that, as well as Ms. LaPlante's presentation, made the committee feel that there was no extra things that they could offer to improve the process, and that they thought the process was really robust and well done. So we would like to say thank you and appreciate all of that. They are looking forward. We're going to be having a presentation from some members of Teaching and Learning about what they currently offer for culturally responsive professional development. And they had already come to present, and then they came back to us and were like, actually, we have more. Can we present again? I wasn't there for the first presentation, so I'm excited to hear what they come back to talk to us about now. And then I guess the last thing was they had questions about school closures and how the administration is supporting the students, the families, both at closing schools and at receiving schools. And I was able to tell them a little bit about what I knew, but the committee, like, they were impressed with the amount that we were doing, requested that maybe, is there a list or somewhere where the public could see everything that's being done, all of the effort that's gone into this, and they felt that at the next meeting they might want to write a memo and give it to the board saying thank you for the effort that's been put into doing this thoughtfully.
Any questions for Mrs. Hardy? Seeing none at this time, thank you. Is there any other board members with committee reports? Seeing none, that will move into the president's report. Yesterday was the Iditarod restart here in Fairbanks, so that was really cool to see all of our students out there. Pikes was insane, and so I had to walk down the river a little bit to be able to have a spot that wasn't so crowded. But to see so many students out there, thank you to the teachers who brought them out. Thank you, Dr. Meinert, for being out there. Best students were out there. I mean, it was just really cool. Like 2,000 some students were out at the restart, and where I was on the river, you could hear them yelling, and it was just the coolest thing. So what an experience, and good luck to all the mushers out there. I know they're not watching this, and they're too busy out there with their dogs, but that's a long way to Nome. So a big thank you going out to Assemblymember Rodermond for his amendment with the CIP project. It did not pass, but I really do appreciate the effort that was put in to advance some school district capital improvement projects. And I really appreciated Ms. Reeves Ramos, Ms. Haney, and Ms. Wilson, who also voted along to bring those forward as well. And we look forward to doing a new process here soon and getting some other projects up on that list for our district. Spring break is next week, and I just want to wish everyone a safe and hopefully fun break from school. If you are traveling, I do hope it's to somewhere a lot warmer than it is here, even though spring is out there and it's been decently warm with all the melting. Please be careful as you're walking around and making your ways around. There are some spots that are a little crazy in the mornings and such, especially here on our sidewalks and at our schools. With that, I would like to take a few moments to talk about the importance of the board maintaining proper decorum in our meetings. As representatives of our community, we set the standard for respectful and productive discourse. It is essential that we model the behavior that we want for our students to learn from. First and foremost, we must remember that every member of this body was elected or appointed to serve with the best interest of our students, staff, and community in mind. While we may have differing perspectives on how that works out, we should approach every discussion with the assumption that each member truly does operate with good intent, trusting that foundation allows us to engage in meaningful, solution-focused dialogue rather than personal conflict, which does us no good. Additionally, it is critical that we uphold respect in other interactions. That means we do not disparage one another, either directly or indirectly. Disagreement is natural and even necessary for this progress, but it must be done professionally and without personal attacks. If we expect students to navigate differences with civility, we must first demonstrate that standard right here at this dais. Ultimately, we must be mindful that the way we conduct ourselves in these meetings reflects on the values we wish to uphold in our schools and community. We're not just decision makers here on this dais. We are role models. By treating one another with dignity, engaging in respectful debate, and working collaboratively despite differences, we reinforce these principles of leadership, accountability, and constructive dialogue that we want our students to carry into their futures. Let's commit to leading with integrity, focusing on facts over assumptions, and respecting one another in both words and actions. Our students are watching us. Let's make sure we are teaching them well. And with that, that is the end of my report. Seeing nothing from the board, we will move into the superintendent's report. Dr. Meinert, would you please share your report with us?
All right, thank you, President Burnett. I have a few comments to start the evening based on the testimony we received tonight. I appreciate the testimony this evening regarding transfers of non-tenured teachers. It's important to note the district does have agreed upon contract language with both FEA, which is our teachers union, and FPA, which is our principals union, that guide these transfers. We've had several collaborative sessions with FEA and FPA throughout the school consolidation process. And we were able to reach an agreement on transitions for tenured teachers, which I'm really happy about. Section 4500 of the Fairbanks Principals Association negotiated agreement states, in collaboration with the superintendent, each building principal will recommend each staff member's assignment to his or her building and shall make the determination regarding each staff member's assignment within the building, consistent with the agreements between the district and FEA or ESSA. FPA has made it clear to the district that they want the opportunity to hire and build teams for their schools. The district does not have the ability to supersede either of these agreements. It's also important to note that we have agreed upon language with FEA that allows tenured staff currently teaching in our schools to apply for open vacancies. And so this also provides those teachers a fair and equitable opportunity to access those school positions that they may have been seeking. President Peterson and I did have a great discussion today to discuss possible ways we can support our educators through these transfers and soften the blow of having to interview for positions. And so we'll continue those conversations while staying within the negotiated contracts that we already have with our labor unions. I'd also like to thank Assemblymember Roderman, Haney, Wilson, and Ramos for supporting the district's CIP projects that are on the borough's KIP. I'm hopeful Mayor Hopkins continues to be supportive of amending the CIP process as he's stated he's willing to do. While the district does participate in the technical scoring, we have no seat at the table for project rankings, and district projects are consistently ranked low and not funded. We've heard the request from the borough to break out CIP projects into smaller increments, and we can certainly do that in the future. It is important to note that we do have smaller projects on the CIP list that they could have funded and could fund right now. And so we've heard that call to break projects out. We'll continue to do that in the future and do so even with the large projects that we have on the KIP. That said, we look forward to working with Mayor Hopkins' administration as the district does take this process seriously, and we're hopeful future assemblies will fund district CIP projects more proactively. Commissioner Bishop and I spoke on the phone this morning, and she is encouraging our district to follow its board policy regarding hearing charter applications. She stated that the state's language needs to be cleaned up in the future so that the state statute is more clear, and acknowledges it would be incredibly difficult to stand up a charter for the coming year, both at the district and state level. I'd like to thank the Fairbanks Symphony Orchestra and Executive Director Daniel Pinkley, who has been recruiting volunteers to work with our elementary students to provide one-on-one and small group lessons. I greatly appreciate their support of our schools and their valuable experience and lessons they're providing our students. Daniel and I have had some great conversations over the last year. He's concerned with the lack of instrumental music opportunities for elementary students, and so I love his proactive approach in seeking volunteers to be able to fill that gap with a partnership here in Fairbanks. So thank you to him and the Fairbanks Symphony Orchestra. The rest of my report tonight is shout out for our students. And so I know the last couple months have been really tough, and it's oftentimes we get lost in the things that happen in this room, and we lose sight of the amazing things that are happening in our schools and around the district every day. And so want to acknowledge the great work and the accolades that our students and staff are receiving throughout both the district community and the state. So starting with the IDITA contest, which is the largest media contest in the state and is part of the Alaska Society for Technology and Education's conference. Every year they have a contest for students and staff to submit different mixed media projects. We had 3 students that won different categories. So Ashley Smith won for music and sound, Benji Barclay won with visual storytelling, and Sydney Young won an award, first place award for digital publishing. We also had 2 teachers, both Ben Johnson and Asling Johnson, also won awards for adults at the ASTI contest. So we were well represented, and can't wait to see those projects as ASTI gets them uploaded on their website. Congratulations to both the West Valley High School boys and girls Nordic ski teams for their runner-up placements at the 2025 ASA First National Bank Alaska Nordic Ski State Championships, which was hosted at Birch Hill and Fairbanks due to the light snow conditions in Anchorage. ASA Executive Director Billy, if you're listening, you should just always move the Nordic ski up to Fairbanks. Had the opportunity to talk to many Anchorage teams, and they were pleasantly surprised by Birch Hill and the amazing facility we have there, and what great snow and the community support. And so it was a great event. Hopeful that the state championships will make it back to Fairbanks on a regular basis, and just congratulations to our West Valley High School athletes. Congratulations to our Lathrop Acadeca, or Academic Decathlon team. They won their 7th consecutive state title and their 17th title all time. So they've won 17 of those state titles over the course of their tenure, which is amazing. In April, they'll get a chance to try and defend their Division II national title in Des Moines, Iowa. Individuals on the team earned more than $15,000 in scholarships and 45 individual medals. The Poetry Out Loud National Competition, presented in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation, is part of a national program that encourages high school students to learn about great poetry through memorization, performance, and competition. In Alaska, Poetry Out Loud is a program of the Alaska State Council of the Arts and the Juneau Arts and Humanities Council. On March 5th, so tomorrow, the Alaska State Poetry Out Loud finalists, which we have 2 of here in the district, will gather for the Alaska State competition in the capital city of Juneau. KTOO Public Media, in partnership with Alaska Poetry Out Loud, will webcast this Alaska State Finals on ktoo.org beginning at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And the 2 students we have are Julia Wang from Fairbanks Best and Jad Lormore from North Pole High School. And so wishing them the very best. If the winner will go on to a national competition in DC, and so I'm hopeful that one of our students will come out victorious. Either way, they're representing us really well, and I look forward to seeing that webcast tomorrow. Echo the thoughts of the Iditarod. It was an amazing event. A huge thank you to Ryan Hinton, our Director of Transportation. The transportation logistics that went into making that event a reality for our students was incredible. And then also thank you for Durham Transportation. I talked to a number of bus drivers and Durham Transportation employees, and they were excellent in handling the chaos of getting more than 2,000 students over to the Iditarod. And so they did tremendous work in helping us make that achievable. Also, a huge thank you to principals, staff, teachers, and volunteers that contributed to the effort and their willingness to bring our students to the memorable experience. I know a lot of times it might seem easier just to sit in the classroom and carry on with their daily work, but you know, as I look back on this and students look back on this, it could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for many of our students, and so glad that they were able to take advantage of that, and that was because of the hard work of our staff that made that happen. So thank you. And then I'd like to close by wishing all of our students and staff and the board a wonderful and safe spring break. It looks to be good weather, and so I hope you get out and are able to enjoy the sunshine. So happy to answer any questions for the board.
Thank you, Dr. Miner. Any questions from board members for Dr. Miner? Mrs. Julian.
Thank you. I have a question about redistricting. I just wanted for the public, when do they have until to fill out the survey? And also I've received some questions from the community members about when will we be announcing the redistricting for next school year? Yeah,
thank you for that question through the chair. The community has until March 7th to fill out the survey. The survey will close. We'll look at both the survey results on option 1 and 2 and the open-ended responses. We'll see if there needs to be any tweaks in the redistricting that would lead us to putting out additional scenarios for feedback. If there's not, then we hope to make a final decision on that by the end of March or early April.
Mr. Dorn.
Thank you, Dr. Minor, for your report. And I want to say thank you to the Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce and to yourself for the State of the Schools. I keep wanting to say State of the State, but State of the Schools report. And especially, I think you hit a really good balance in putting the challenges, the funding that since we don't get, we have not seen investments in public education from the state, putting that forward, what challenges are there, pointing out that in terms of the number of students is greatly attributed to the fact that the total population in the borough and indeed in the state is getting smaller. We are not attracting families to the state, and so therefore it does have an impact on our schools. And then you also included a number of shout outs to students and staff to share that with the community. So I really appreciate the breadth of it and the balance within that. And then one thing, not for tonight, but that usually, or the last year, you were able to bring a mid-year progress report on the goals that you talked about at the beginning of this year. You've had a few things on your plate over the last 2 months, but I think as we are actually getting close to the end of the school year, it would be good to maybe have that brought forward in an upcoming superintendent's report, just to let the public know the progress we're making, that you've been making on that, and certainly the board will deal with conversations as we need to do, but I think that was very helpful to parents in the community in the past, and is a nice compliment to your State of the Schools.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your comments, and I can certainly bring the data forward that goes along or corresponds with the goals that we set at the beginning of the year. So I can do that in the near future superintendent report.
Any other questions for Dr. Minor at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Minor, for your report. That will bring us to our next item on the agenda, which is our policy 1240, school connected organizations. Policy 1240, school connected organization, is proposed to be revised and is before the board for second reading by administration. Good evening, Ms. Dillard. Anything for the board this afternoon? I know that it was pretty smooth the last time we did this, but just curious on any updates.
No updates. President Burnett, thank you for the introduction. If this is adopted tonight, then the policy will be implemented, but the approval process that's outlined in the policy will be for future requests, and the date to start that will be included in the administrative regulation. That draft is already completed.
Thank you, Ms. Dillard. Is there discussion from the board on this policy? Seeing none, I would take a motion at this time.
Move to approve second reading, public hearing, and adoption of policy 1240, school connected organizations.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. We will take this out for public comment. Is there any public testimony or comment at this time on this policy? Seeing none, public comment now closed. We will come back to the board. Any comments, questions, concerns from the board? Seeing none, Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the vote?
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Colonel Foster?
Yes.
Miss Charlie?
Yes.
Warren?
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Miss Maple?
Yes.
Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Miss Julian?
Yes.
Miss Carol Hubbard?
Yes.
Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you. That will take us into our information and reports. First up is our building rental fees report. Executive Director of Facilities Management Department, Johanara Carry-On, and Andy DeGraw, Chief Operations Officer, will present a report on building rental fees. Board, as you can tell, our front screen is broken here, so if you could pay attention to the sides, that's where things will go up for us. Good evening, Ms. Carry-On and Mr. DeGraw.
Good evening. Thank you, board members. I'm here to present the building rentals rental rate adjustments. So first of all, we serve our community and we do community organizations by offering our facilities for public use. These are usually offered to nonprofit organizations with a key role in the interior community. We also offer programs that directly benefit the district students. They use our school gyms for athletic activities, and they also utilize our theaters where we host community performances. The cost and the benefit. So while the district supports the community nonprofits, hosting these activities comes with costs. The utility costs are associated with operating a facility and providing the heat, the lighting, the ventilation, etc., as opposed to reducing utility use during unoccupied site status. The service costs are costs associated with expenses for employees' coverage to manage the building access, monitor activities, and ensure security. We also handle the cleanup after the events. Here's some information about the utility costs. We track our utility costs on a monthly basis by the facilities maintenance department. We looked at the hourly costs that can be calculated by adding up the total utility expenditures, and then we divide that total number of costs with the number of hours during a specific time period. So what we found is that our secondary school average utility cost is about $59.84 per hour, and the primary elementary school average utility cost is $24.75 per hour. These are just based on actual costs. So our average custodial cost is about $41 approximately, and our theater technician is about $55 per hour. Here are some additional expenditures that come with building rentals. There's the administrative staff, there's the theater manager, and then there's the building rental specialist. We utilize an event management software system. There's costs, damages, general wear, and then overtime staffing. Here's our current rental charges. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but we did increase the gym cost by $1, I think, back in 2021, and then we haven't changed the theater rental rate since 2016. Here's how we do our current rental charges. We charge them based on the type of the space that is used. The events requiring theater operations staff are charged at between $50 to $55 per hour. Weekend activities require a monitor, so a custodian. At approximately, we charge them at a rate of $50 to $55 per hour. While we understand that hosting activities is a valid community service, it does come at a cost to the district. The rental income alone cannot cover the full cost of hosting these activities. Here's the next slide is going to show what we're proposing to increase. So when we originally looked at the data, we looked at the break-even rates. The break-even rates we realize is going to be really costly for the nonprofit group. So what we did was we actually looked at 25% of that break-even rate. So here's our rental rate proposal. So gyms and room. On the top, you're going to see the current hourly rental rate summary, and at the bottom is going to be our proposed hourly rental rates. We've decided to increase it. So if you're looking at the primary gym, currently it's at $3 per hour. We're going to increase that to $6.50, so that's an increase of $3.50. The secondary gym is currently at $5, and we're going to increase that to $15, and this is for the nonprofit youth group. The special rooms is $3, and we're going to increase that to $5, and the standard classroom as well is going to be $1, and it's going to be increasing to $5. We also currently do not charge a weekday service, and that's going to be included in the future rental proposal. Here's some breakdown information on our nonprofit youth contributions. So the primary gym on an hourly rate, the utility cost is $24.75. Sorry, did I skip a page? And then the service cost is about $5. So the user contribution is going to be $11.50, and the district contribution is $18.25. And on the weekends, the utility cost is the same, $24.75, and the service cost at $41, which total cost is $65.75. The user contribution is $56.50, and then our district contribution is going to be $9.25. And then secondary is the utility is $59.84. The service cost is $50. User contribution is $15, and then district contribution is $18. And then for the weekend, the secondary gym utility, again, $59.84. $41 in the service cost on the weekend. The total cost is $100. The user contribution is $65, and the district contribution is $35. And then this information is for the non-profit adult contributions. The built-in rental rate proposal for theaters. So I do want to make a note that we haven't actually changed any of the rates for the theaters except for the hours. So we did reduce the hours from 12 hours to 8 hours. So where before the 8 hours, with the 12 hours, we used to charge $825. We're now going to be charging that for only 8 hours. So if they do want to utilize the theater for an extra 4 hours, there's going to be an additional $100 per hour charge, and that's across all our theaters. So in conclusion, while the district recognizes the value of supporting external activities and nonprofit user groups in our community, the cost of the operations illustrates the need to meet these costs. A rate increase would be within reason, with the district continuing to contribute a considerable amount of the cost that's associated with using our school district facilities. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Carrion. Is there questions from the board for Ms. Carrion? Ms. Maple.
On slide 14, the theaters one. So the primary change you talked about was that $825 now is for 8 hours rather than 12 hours.
Correct.
The numbers underneath that, then the $100 per hour for extra hours, I understand that. Those three below that, are those what it has been, or are those additional? Are those new?
The theater technician and the custodial is, we've always had that. The additional will be the operational fee. Sorry, thank you for pointing that out. Forgot to mention that. We will be charging a weekend operational fee, which is going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only, and that's a new cost.
So I'm looking specifically, I'll just look at Herring, although they all look similar, but looking at Herring, so if I were to rent the facility for 12 hours before this, I would pay $825, and I would also pay for the theater technician and the custodial based off, that's how it is now.
Correct.
And so the change is that now for 4 of those hours, I'd have the extra $100, and then the additional $200. That's the only two new things, other than okay, I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Dorn.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, so if you need to put me back in the queue.
Okay, yeah, I've got a couple other board members, so yes.
Okay. I'm sorry I don't have page numbers, and perhaps just a reminder, if we could put those on, it would make it easier. But your earlier slide in the stack on utility costs, there the secondary schools is $59.84. The primary school or elementary schools are $24.75. What constitutes that big difference in that?
The space of the building. It's the space of the building, the size of the facility, and
Okay.
the costs associated with that.
Okay. And a follow-up to that, connected to it, is related to this. When you figure out those hourly costs, is that the cost for the areas that they're using, or is that based on figuring out you're taking the entire building and then dividing it by square footage or whatever?
Yeah, what we did was we got the entire square footage of the building, and we only took 25% of that, and that's what we're going to be charging the community.
Okay,
user
thank you.
groups.
Put me back in the key.
Okay. Mrs. Hardy.
Yeah, thank you to the administration for bringing this forward. For board members that weren't on the board, we received an email back in July from the manager of the SRC. And he asked us why we were no longer renting to some of the local youth soccer on Sundays, and then said that SRC charges them a premium to be able to go into that space. And he also said there's a huge demand in this community for pickleball. And I have sat through a couple Borough Assembly meetings to know that that is true. There is an avid pickleball community, and they want gym time. So I'm really glad this has come forward. I do wonder, though, did we look into what the SRC's fees were? Are we competitive? If we're running at a deficit already, and I understand being partners, but with our nonprofits and all of that, is there a way that we could be capitalizing on the pickleball enthusiasm and charging people who are willing to pay for that to do it more? Is there a way that if they're already paying other people for this money, why are we continuing to add to our deficit by offering things that we can't afford?
Do you want to?
So, similar to a couple of comments and questions yesterday, there's a lot of layers to the response to this question and kind of comment, and a lot of what you say, Ms. Hardy, makes a lot of sense. This has been an extremely volatile and delicate topic that we have attempted to broach in prior years. And the premise is that these are taxpayer-funded facilities and that they should be available to the community. So I have been present for 2 prior attempts and extremely passionate in an extremely volatile, energetic, enthusiastic response to attempts to raise our rates. So the numbers that Ms. Carrion has presented here tonight reflect basically a break-even point of what the costs are. To Mr. Doran's point, we've whittled it down to the space of the gym, for example, and attempted to itemize specifically the additional cost that we're incurring for that space. So yeah, I definitely hear you. There could be some room to increase rates, but my response based on experience is it's been an animated discussion in the past, I guess.
So specifically to the pickleball comments, have we been receiving those? And those seem like not nonprofits. Those seem like just avid sports players. Can we have a rate for those type of things?
We can certainly. I'll get with my building rentals team and see if they've received any information, and we can definitely look into that.
Thank you, Ms. Carrion. Oh, Dr. Minor.
And just a note on kind of the competitiveness of these rates, they're still incredibly competitive compared to what the university is charging. The individual that wrote from the university, I believe their cheapest facility on campus that they rent is $55 an hour, and that's not gym space, and so there is room to potentially expand. But as Mr. DeGraw stated, honorary doctorate. It has been a difficult conversation both at the board level and with our community, and we know how important these facilities are, and so want to be cognizant of that and have them available for community use.
Thank you, Dr. Minor. Ms. Julian.
Thank you. So I looked at the the budget, the fiscal year 26 budget. And in the fiscal year 26 budget, it states that we have projected revenues for rentals at $260,000 over for this next year, and that's what we're getting right now. However, this is increasing those rates. So what would be the increase to our overall revenue for fiscal year 26 if we go with these new rates?
Yeah, so I'm still in the process of calculating those numbers, and once we wanted to present this to the board, and once our plan is to move forward with these numbers, and I'll be able to possibly by recommended budget, but more likely an approved budget, be able to have some updated revenue estimates there. I will say it's not going to be significant. It won't be many hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it will be something.
Mr. Doran.
Okay. Somewhat similar, so I'm trying to keep a difference approach, but I am concerned why we're not doing break-even rates, and I know the sensitivity of the conversation because that's been one of those things that it comes around every few years. But I guess I would really like to see what the break-even rate would bring in, and I think it's still a very low rate, and especially you offered a comparison, so that's helped me informationally. But you know, being that it's a low rate, we are not getting the funding. We do need to have that. We need to share that burden, and 650 is going up through 350 is absolutely minimal. So could you answer that question? Why not the break even if it's already a low rate?
I can take that. If I'm hearing from the board, if there does become consensus around wanting to look at higher rates, we can certainly go back and bring that forward to the board and provide that information. You know, we didn't want the shock value to be there in terms of raising it so much that one, it impacts our students in our communities for using the buildings, and kind of negating student participation in different events. We know students do better when they participate in extracurricular activities, whether or not that's through the school or community organization. So we're cognizant of that. But if I do hear from the board that they would like us to go back and look at you know, rates that are more break even, we can bring that forward to the board at a future work session or meeting.
Okay. Through the chair, if there I would ask if there is further interest, if it's only mine, I would recommend that we at least get what that would be if we did break even, as well as the number that, and we would need it earlier rather than later, but the number that the 650 proposed rate would be, and also what a 25 would be.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. I definitely would support looking at that for maybe like non-profits, things not attached to the youth, like the pickleball crowd and crowds like that. If it's not a nonprofit, I definitely would be in favor of seeing what the break even would be for me. Anyway, we have Mrs. Hardy and then Miss Julian.
I will also say I'm supportive of looking at what the break-even rate would be even for adult nonprofits. I think youth nonprofits, it makes sense to share the burden. Those are our students. That is the community that we are here to serve, and I think that is more than reasonable to bring it up some, but not too much. Adult nonprofits, you could make some exceptions for certain ones, or I don't know, but I feel like we should be at least breaking even on those. And then I did look up the rates for the SRC for like their courts, and their nonprofit rate is $55 an hour, and their public, so if you're not a nonprofit, is $65 an hour before 3 p.m. and $75 an hour after 3 p.m. So there's a market, and I think we have a principle that might know a lot about the pickleball crowd, and we could definitely, I believe the quote that came in the email was, you could fund at least 2 FTEs through pickleball.
Knowing what I pay for ice, I'm just saying. Ms. DeLeon, we're going to actually go to Zoom real quick to Mr. Burgess, and then we'll come back to you. Mr. Burgess, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to express my support for break-even pricing too, and I agree with Mrs. Hardy regarding the potentially having a higher rate for organizations that are not nonprofits or certain types of nonprofits that aren't youth-oriented.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Ms. DeLeon.
Yeah, I'm supportive of going beyond the break even to a point where we might have some revenue. I think that we are shocked. This entire community is shocked by what we are having to grapple with. And this is an opportunity, a small opportunity, but an opportunity to invite the community in to provide some solutions. And this is also has been noted through our budget committee as an opportunity that we should explore. So I'm leaning on that community voice as well. There is support, and to the extent that we can go beyond, I'm thinking about the university and the rates that thank you for pulling those up, the rates that they're charging. Those are also taxpayer facilities, as are ours. I do not want to bear this burden on any of the youth groups that support us, so I support that of keeping our rates low for any student activities, any youth activities. However, the adult activities, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit or private, floorball is also a big hit, and that is also another rabid crowd that wants time, and usually they have to play at 9 p.m. to midnight at the SRC, and so wouldn't it be cool if they could do that earlier and my husband could get home earlier? But I do think I would support us looking at going beyond the break even and getting into a realm where we might have some revenue.
Ms. Maple.
I want to just remind all of us that specifically nonprofits in our community that use these services are nonprofits exist to fill gaps, and not necessarily the gaps of our school district, but the gaps of what our local government, state, federal, is able to provide. And so as we hear these other numbers and hear what would be profitable versus break even versus this rate, while we are all hurting, and I hear that really clearly, and is not something I'd thought about prior to other board members' comments, the thing that makes me the most nervous about increases to these rates is that while we're all hurting, we don't want to create a scenario where we lose other services from nonprofits. And I'm sure that we will hear from them, those that would have feelings about it. But I agree that we can't make any decisions with it. We can make the best decision with having all of the information. So I agree to getting more information makes sense. But I am cautious in just going through some of my very bad math of trying to identify what the real impact would be on somebody renting out a theater for a day to provide services that our community needs, that for a small nonprofit, even a small increase can have pretty catastrophic impacts, especially in our current landscape. So there's my caution, but I do agree that we should have as much information as possible to make an educated choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maple. We have Ms. Carol Hubbard, and then we'll go to Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. I'd like to just ask a couple of clarifying questions first. On the building rental rate proposal, that's the one that's up. Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. The break even for a secondary gym is $60. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's for the whole, that's for the whole building, not just for the gym.
Oh, okay. So the break even point I saw on the other page was 25 and 60. So sorry, I just need to clarify what I'm agreeing to and what I'm looking at. So the break even point for is this no, this is the wrong. Sorry, these are the break even points. Okay. I'm looking at building rental rate proposal, gyms and rooms. And so that
One.
Okay, so this does not have the break evens on here? This is not
the break even.
Okay.
Cost.
And so the school district is subsidizing these activities for nonprofit youth and nonprofit adult, but not subsidizing for commercial, based on what I'm seeing here. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And so if we're looking at break evens, then that means that the school district would no longer be subsidizing if we put everybody at break even.
Correct. If we use our break even rates, we would be making a small amount of profit, or just it will be
breaking even. Okay. Okay. So I guess I hesitate to want to see nonprofit youth rates go up simply because I think it's really important to have these students involved in whatever it is that they're using the gyms for, whether it be sports or activities. But I would like to see nonprofit. I would support the nonprofit being at break even, and of course the commercial being that's where we actually get a little bit of a profit. So I hope that made sense.
Thank you, Ms. Carol Hubbard. We will go to Mr. Burgess, then we have Mrs. Hardy, and then Mr. Dorn.
Thank you. I just picked up on Mrs. Maple's comments there and completely agree that we should be conscientious about the impacts to nonprofits. And while I'm sure that we will hear from some of them because we're discussing this, I would also like to actually do some active outreach. The administration could seek out those nonprofits and solicit their feedback on their impacts. Any that are common users, I suppose I should clarify. I think that would be helpful in our decision making here. Thank you.
Mrs. Hardy.
And to Ms. Maple's comment as well, I wasn't actually the number 14 that talks about theater rentals. Didn't really seem to say how much it was changing or break even, and so that wasn't what I was referring to. And I think that's almost a different realm altogether. Those are community-wide events everybody benefits from. They're putting on shows. They are part of the richness of our community, and I would be really hesitant to do something that might make less of that, especially if you think of it's not blanking, the ones who do concerts for our students, but I'm blanking on the name. Somebody wants to help. The Fairbanks, Concert Association. There we go. That is such a rich and beautiful partnership, and they give us so much, and we get so much, and that is not where I think we should be seeking to make a profit. I was strictly feeling about gym space rentals, that there is an opportunity for us to capture an active user base that is already willing to pay and wants to pay, and knowing the people who emailed us are saying we'd really like to give it to you, and there's not enough space at SRC to even meet the demand. I think that's our community saying, let us help you. And that shouldn't, it's by not touching things for the soccer rentals, and that it allows us to continue to offer that. It was pointed out that Eclipse wasn't able to rent soccer space on Sundays, and they want that, but we couldn't afford because it costs so much. But if we're offsetting that deficit with adult users and other people who are willing to pay that money, then we can allow these youth soccer teams to have a reasonable rate and have that available for our students. That's where my comments are.
Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Before we go to Mr. Doran, I do want to remind the board that this piece of information is outlined in AR. So this is specifically information for the board. Administration will take our suggestions back to relook at this, but this will not be something the board makes a decision on. This is something that the administration and Dr. Meinert will make a decision on at the end. So with that, Mr. Doran.
You've added another nuance to it.
I figured you would say that, Mr. Doran.
Because it does enter into budget. So
Yep.
so it's that combination of, it's the partnership that we
Yep.
have in looking at it. And so I'm appreciative of getting those figures for revenues at the various levels. And we might come to something in between even, but that discussion, when we have the information, will be there. But I appreciate the reminder of differences between AR and other things. So, the page that says nonprofit youth contributions has the 4 sections. Just that we might correct the one in the secondary gym under weekdays. The numbers don't match. So if we get that corrected. On the break-even rates, a clarification. After the rental charge, at the break-even column, it says potential revenue. Is that based on the break-even, or what we're getting, or what we would be getting under the new proposal? What's that potential revenue number related to?
So when we looked at that potential revenue, that's looking at the break-even cost for the entire building and not just the percentage of the group, area that's being used. This is just information here that if we were to charge at these rates, this is the potential revenue. But then if you look at the utility expenditure, we're not really making much of a profit, and that's why that's just the break-even rate.
But that's okay. So that's the rental hours times the break-even to give that revenue. Okay,
Yes.
and then you're just showing how we make $1,000.
Yes.
Okay, but I wanted to know which revenue that was. I have another clarification question. I'm wondering what the definition is of nonprofit, youth or adult versus commercial, and why I ask that question in terms of, do they have to be nonprofit to and have a bylaws and 501c3 status, or do we have flex within it that's, there's a group, and I'm thinking the pickleball example was, I don't know whether they have a group, but they're nonprofit. They're just playing, how we are with that versus somebody who wants to have an activity where they're looking to make a profit. They're commercial. So how do we deal with those situations that come up with a student? There might be a group saying, can I have we're going to do a camp this weekend or an activity with kids. Do they have to have a 501c3 or what?
Yes, there are some parameters around the nonprofit group versus the commercial. They do have to have some sort of insurance liability. We do require I wouldn't say a lot, but there are parameters around, who can use the facility. So if you had a group, for example, that is saying that they're a nonprofit but they don't have all the requirements, they will not be able to rent the gym. So it is just for groups that do have all the necessary paperwork.
Great. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. And I have one more whenever we get to it.
Mrs. Julian.
Thank you. I just want to request that we do get that number before the budget cycle, or at least an estimate, because if it is, I'm looking at the numbers, if it's an equivalent of an increase of what we've budgeted, which is $260,000, if it's an increase of 180, we don't have to increase PTR by 0.5 in middle school. So that's why I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. If we can lower even just one tick on PTR, because we're going to take a risk and say that even with this proposal, we'd get 180 more thousand. Let's do it.
Mr. Dorn, for your final question.
And this to the administration, because it just came up to me today. Sorry I didn't get to send it to you earlier, but somebody passed it on. They were told that next year, they're with one of the nonprofit sports groups, youth groups, that they would not be able to get building rentals because there it wouldn't be covered under the custodial contract. We wouldn't have people to monitor it. So they were concerned. I said, well, let me get a clarification on that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. I'm glad you asked that question. We're hopeful that building rentals will actually be able to increase because of the custodial contract that the board may enter into. One of the limiting factors of having building rentals available for groups is not having enough custodians to cover the day-to-day operations of those facilities. And so we're hopeful, along with the proposal of increasing rates and along with increased staffing, that we'll be able to provide more opportunities for our community to use our facilities.
And may I add one observation relative to this topic?
Absolutely, Mr. Dorn.
Okay. And this is basically a shout out to our custodians and building rentals and stuff, because there was building rentals that I happened to see over at Denali, and I got to talk to the custodian there, and she said she normally is a custodian at Tanana, and we're just talking a little bit, and she said, oh, you're coming to visit this next week? I said, yes, and stuff. So, well, Tanana is really busy this weekend. Tanana was full with wrestlers from all over the state, and I've heard numbers into the thousands, but certainly a very large group. And the thing that I thought speaks so well to not only her but our custodians is that she said, well, I'm concerned because I was going on Tuesday. She said, there's a lot of work still because students were staying in classrooms and all the things in the gyms and activity around the hallways, et cetera, et cetera. She said, I'm just concerned that it may not be up to our standards. And you might, she actually said, you might find a fingerprint on the wall. And I mean, that you normally, if give us another day, we would have it done. I thought that was such a compliment to, and because our custodians say it's our buildings, they work at it. She was doing such a great job at where she was at Denali, thinking about the school and the custodians there who were helping out with that and doing the cleanup. And I have to say, when I walked in, I didn't find any fingerprints on the wall. But it's a shout out again to what our staff does. And when our schools do host local events that draw much broader, it is, again, a testament to all the staff in a school that really make those things happen. So, and the last thing is that our community members, as they rent it, trying to take care of the facilities when they're there. So it's broad praise.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. Anything else from the board at this time? Seeing nothing, thank you, Ms. Carrion. Thank you, Mr. DeGraw. question to the board. Do we need 5 minutes before we jump into curriculum?
Charge on.
Charge on. I'm only seeing one head shake. Okay, we will move on into our proposed curriculum report, grades K through 12, art and world language curriculum. Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Chain Beam, along with Tara Devon, Secondary Curriculum Coordinator, will provide a presentation on the art and world language curriculum proposed for grades K through 12. Hello, Ms. Devon, and hello, Mr. Beam. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time. And in case you have not met her, next to me is my co-presenter today, Tara Devon. She is the secondary coordinator for teaching and learning. And I'm happy to have her here because she is the one who does all of the work that I'm about to claim some credit for. So we're going to bring to you today two of the curriculums that we have worked on this year. This year, typically we might have one, maybe two curriculums in a year, but because of the way things have backed up over the last year, still honestly back to COVID issues, is that we had 5 to do this year, and we're bringing you 2 tonight, and we'll bring the rest in about a month or so. The first one we're going to look at is art curriculum. And as a reminder, curriculum in this case refers to not things we buy, those are materials, but curriculum refers to what we're going to teach and the structure of that and what's the content of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So the first thing I want to show you here is we get lots of feedback from lots of different groups when we do this. I like to say that even though teacher and learning is kind of responsible for making sure that the curriculum gets out there and the teachers use it, it's not our curriculum. We are not the ones who create it. It's created by the teachers of that content area. And we just help that process go. So if you can look at this slide here, and this kind of bounces up and down, I don't love it. I wish I would have made it differently. But it's a timeline that goes straight across, starts at the bottom, September 1st. We can see that this started way back in 2023, and the teachers met and they started this whole stage. And then just a few days later, we met with the board curriculum committee to talk about what the teachers talked about the 6 days earlier. So what we'll see is a pattern of teachers doing things and the board curriculum committee hearing about it and giving their input on it also. And then the next time we can see down in December and January, we had public comment. And when we say public comment, what we mean here is typically what we would do is send a survey out. We would email it to a wide variety of groups, UAF, A&E, just like dozens of groups. We put it out on social media. We put it on our website, and we ask for comments from the public. And sometimes we get just a few comments. Sometimes we get a whole bunch of comments. It just depends on what people are interested in. So that's what public comment means here. And then what happens is when we get the public comment, we can see in July, notice that like there were several months, and this is July 23 to 26 of 2024. So this is summer work. We got some of the art teachers together, and they took the information that they've gathered so far and created draft 1 of this curriculum. Then we can see in August, just a few weeks later, August 9th, the art teachers as a whole for our district reviewed draft 1 and gave their feedback. So you have a small group of art teachers creating that draft, goes to all of our art teachers, they look at it, they give their feedback. In October, we had another round of public feedback. We dealt with that. In November, teachers again gave some of their feedback on what the public feedback was. Then in November again, we took it back to the BCC to say, here's where we are. Here's what people have said so far. Then in January 9th of 2025, we had our final draft, which would be draft 2. We presented it to the board curriculum committee. They looked at it. The following month, they voted on it. and they recommended that we bring it to you all. So I just want to talk about that process, and so you all can see, if this is new to you, that this is not something that Teacher and Learning just puts out there. It really belongs to the teachers, and we help the process, and we get a lot of feedback from a lot of different groups. Here's another way of looking at it, and just to make sure that we understand that teachers have a lot of say-so in their curriculum. So what you have here on the left is a way to kind of look at that is that in September 1st of 2023, there were 35 teachers who met together and looked at what we had done so far. We had a curriculum writing that summer. Then on August 9th, art teachers gave their feedback. 9 people did that. And then November 15th, art teachers reviewed it and gave their feedback again. Now, when you look at 9 and 4, you think, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. But the reality is, for art, we don't have a lot of art teachers. And that is, yeah. So that's kind of why those numbers are small. When we start looking at, in the future, math or language arts, now those numbers will grow quite a bit.
So just to kind of highlight some of the significant changes, and I really do want to shout out, like, especially at the elementary level, we don't have elementary teachers, right? It's the general ed classroom teacher that is also teaching art, and it was general ed classroom teachers that are passionate about teaching art that showed up in the summer to evaluate, right, our elementary curriculum. And they had a large undertaking because they did a complete format change. And really the goal with that format change was to go, this is a classroom teacher that also is teaching math and reading and writing and science and social studies. And then we say, here's art, also do that. And so how can we have a document that doesn't make that seem so intimidating that they go, yeah, maybe we'll get out some crayons, right? Like, and so how could they reformat it to really look at, well, here are lessons that we're already doing in our reading. And so how can we pull in an art right into that? Here's a math lesson, and how can we pull art into that? And so it was a major undertaking. So it was a huge format change. Lots of, and the big thing, like there's lots of long lists of biographies of artist biographies, and they moved those around to make it like just flow better, but just trying to really respect the work that goes in the elementary level in an elementary classroom. And I am a secondary person through and through, and so I don't get all of that, but like I know it was needed. At the middle school level, they added a new course called Art Concepts, was developed using the 6th grade curriculum. So this is the first time that art curriculum had been looked at since the decision was made to move 6th grade into middle school, right? And so we needed to then really look at having a 6th grade, because we had a 7th grade and we had an 8th grade. So what does 6th grade look like? And it had just kind of been moved up from elementary. So that was the big change at middle school. And then at high school, there was a few different pieces there, essential topics. So a lot of the essential topics, like the standards, it was like, it's kind of that idea of like, you're hitting on some of those same standards in every single class. So instead of having every single class, like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, they tried to say our art standards in general are these, and then these are these essential pieces then, and then the course descriptions really hit more on like what's happening in each course. They also included 8 studio habits of mind, and that actually, and this came out of public comment and the board curriculum committee to say, well, let's get the 8 studio habits of mind everywhere. So although we're calling it out as a significant change here at the high school level, it ended up getting added across the board, this idea of the 8 studio habits of mind. For all the courses with 2 semesters, right, we made sure to state that semester 1 had to be completed before semester 2. That was like direct feedback from high school counselors on making sure kids are getting, and art teachers, that we're not putting somebody into a second semester course when they haven't taken and passed the first semester course, because there are prerequisites that they need. We had a long discussion about our Alaska Native Arts courses, and making sure to clarify that those courses also introduce non-Indigenous Alaska artists. And we spent a long time, and I'm really thankful for the board curriculum committee, and our FNA representative on the board curriculum committee was really great on helping us like wordsmith this so that we were inclusive of all pieces and getting at what teachers were trying to get from the course, but also being respectful of like what really was happening in that class. And then an art workshop was added as a way to be like a capstone class. So we have some like super passionate artists in our district, and sometimes they run out of like there's not a fourth level. So instead of making a fourth level of every possible art course, we said let's make kind of a capstone, kind of that idea of what CTE does, and then having a capstone class that can incorporate a lot of different things. Oh, sorry, also still me. We just did some name changes just to try to be a little more clear. This whole like Art 1 2D and Art 2 2D, and just moving to language we're using other curriculums of beginning, intermediate, advanced. So again, and this is really to help more on the counseling front, so that kids are getting placed correctly and somebody's not in advanced art when they haven't done beginning or intermediate, but we might not have realized that Art 3 needed to come after Art 1 and 2. So just some clarifying.
So in your packets, you have 2 documents about art. One is from me recommending this to you all to please vote on in the past. And the other one comes from the board curriculum committee that they voted also, and they would recommend that you all pass this also. Moving to world language, the process is very much the same. So I'm not going to go over all these dates because some of them are very similar to what we've already looked at, but it's that same process. Teachers work on it. It's their curriculum. We help the process. There's a lot of feedback from the public, from the teachers as a whole, and the board curriculum committee. We bounced back and forth, and we ended up with the same thing. Again, on January 9th, we presented our final draft to the board curriculum committee, and then the following month they voted to recommend it to you all. And then here is the same thing as far as just I wanted to make sure that you all had a clear picture that we do have a lot of input from teachers in the content area that we are working on.
And so world language, although we try to, each time we do a curriculum rewrite, we're looking at K-12, like we don't offer world language really in the elementary. And so there's no change there. What's in our curriculum document at the elementary level is a recommendation for if a school wanted to teach a language, here are kind of the things that you should focus on at an elementary level. We did not have any elementary teachers as part of the writing team. It was just our high school teachers. Same at the middle school, right? At the middle school level, world languages are actually one of the approved courses that if a student takes Spanish 1 in middle school, and they are following the high school curriculum, then they would get high school credit for that class. So we don't need a separate middle school Spanish class because they can just take the high school class, assuming a middle school has a Spanish teacher. So at the high school level is really where our focus was. And the reality here for world languages in our district right now, what we teach is Spanish. And then we have Chinese at West Valley, and West Valley students end up with Japanese because of a partnership with UAF, but not. And then F.E. Cochran has some Alaska Native languages, but really what we're teaching across the board is Spanish. And so it's hard to bring in 3 Spanish teachers and the Chinese teacher, that was who was our writing committee, and then say, hey, write curriculum, tell me what it's supposed to be, what French is supposed to be. Because unlike math, where that's what I did for 20 years in the classroom, right? And if one year I was teaching algebra and the next year I had to teach pre-calculus, that's just what happens. As a Spanish teacher, you're not necessarily then going to be able to go teach French. It can happen, but it's not the norm. And so we had a huge structural change for world language, and we actually modeled this off of Kenai School District had their curriculum this way. And so we do a lot in our research phase of what else is happening around the state, right? To stay kind of in the same realm as the other, especially the Big Five. And so instead of rewriting every single course, Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, French 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Chinese 1, 2, 3, 4, the committee decided to write here's what level 1 looks like for any language. Like, these are the standards you're going to address. This is kind of the vocab range and the cultural pieces and things that you're going to address. Like, level 1 focuses on this, whether you're doing that through Spanish, through Chinese, through French, through German, through Russian, whatever it might be. Here's what level 2 would focus on. Here's what level 3 would focus on. Here's what level 4 would focus on. And then we kept, of course, course descriptions for all of the languages we offer. And then that more robust kind of what does Spanish 1 like break down, so what would be like our current curriculum documents, we are moving that to our appendix. So it's still there and it still exists, and then we can continue to work on those. And again, we're teaching, like, we have Spanish teachers, so that's something we can easily keep working on. But now if we are able to get a French teacher back out of school, they would have that access to those pieces as well. But that was a huge piece, and that group did a lot of work to try to process what that would look like, but I think they really put a quality document together. So we did add in some new courses. We added Russian 1 and 2. There had been a pilot happening at Tanana Middle School as Russian, and so it wasn't necessarily at a high school level. And we're like, well, if they're piloting it and you can get high school credit for other language courses, we just added Russian 1 and 2 into our, and again, that new structure allowed that to happen because we only needed to really write a course description. And then if we end up with somebody that can teach Russian, we can beef that up. We also added American Sign Language 1 through 3. Level 1 had been a pilot at Lathrop, and actually American Sign Language was in our world language curriculum, not the current curriculum that's adopted, but the previous one. I don't know why it went away, but we brought it back. And then we added Koyukon 2. We had Koyukon 1. Effie Cochran had reached out to us this year and said, hey, we have some students that need this, so can we pilot it? And we said yes, and actually we're writing curriculum, so we're going to just add it in. And then we archived, we had a lot of different like cultural classes that were separate from like our language classes, and our teachers are like, we teach the culture within the language class, so we archived the culture classes. And then French 4, like we just, when I pull enrollment data over the last, 6 to 8 years, like we haven't offered French 4. And so if we're not offering it, we archive it. And certainly if we ended up at the level where we needed it back, an archive is easy to pull back within our pilot process.
So in your packet, there are 2 documents, just like I said before, one from me, one from the committee. Both recommended that the board adopt these curriculums. I do want to say thank you to the teachers who put this together. It's a tremendous amount of work for very little money. I would say what I've heard is back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, is that teachers could get paid $2,000, $3,000 for the work that they do for this. And just because of, everything that's been gone on over the last several years, we pay them a couple $100, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart. They do a tremendous amount of work. And we could not do it without them. Without the teachers, this work would not get done. So we're very fortunate and thankful that they do this work. And we thank you all for taking a look at it, and we're ready to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. And Ms. Devon, my year spent on the curriculum committee, I can attest to how much work goes into this. So absolutely thank you to everybody involved. With that, is there questions from the board? Mrs. Hardy.
Yes, thank you to the committees, all the teachers, everyone who put all of this together. And it's just an informational. So you had said, and I know because my sibling took American Sign Language at West Valley, that dropped off and you brought it back. Looking at the list, and it's not part of our documents to the board, it's the one you can get off the curriculum's website. It looks like we don't have German anywhere as an offering. I know that we haven't, maybe I took it in high school at West Valley. Is that then sometime, if that ever comes back, we'll pull it from the recesses of prior ones and stick it back in there? Or like French, since we haven't offered it in a while, should that be a part?
Right, so since German is not a currently adopted language either, and then the committee chose not to add it in on we're struggling to teach just Spanish at this point. So if we had the ask, right? If somebody really did want to teach like a German 1 class, it would have to go through the pilot process, because we don't have like and even an archived course has to go through the pilot process. It's just that that's much quicker, because part of the pilot process is you telling us like, what are all the things you're going to teach? And if you're like, well, I want to teach the archive course, then we just pull out all the things you want to teach. You don't really have to fill that part out. For German, they would have to like give us an outline of what they wanted to teach. Yeah. So.
Miss Maple.
I just wanted to say thank you for adding ASL back in. I'm sure it wasn't intentional that it fell out, but my son attends the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program at UPark, and obviously we employ people that have this skill, and we certainly need to continue. And I know that at my day job, we just recently brought somebody in because we are realizing that we're interacting with so many folks, poorly interacting with so many folks, and it was a skill that we needed. So glad to see it there. Thank you.
Mr. Doran.
Thank you for the report tonight. And I think intriguing approaches that you've taken, which I really like the way you've taken things that are in common rather than repeating that, doing that. But a couple of questions to start on the significant art changes for high school. It's the sheet I'm looking for. Again, I don't have a page number, I'm sorry. But the second bullet, for all courses with 2 semesters, you have to do semester 1 before semester 2, and it's a wording understanding. If you don't have to take semester 1 in semester 1, you could take the first, I'm assuming it's 1-2, not necessarily semester, but it's the course is 1-2, and so you have to take the first section before you take the second section, but you might wind up with, a school could offer section 1 either semester, for instance.
Right. So, so theoretically, you're absolutely correct. And when I was a teacher at a super large high school, that could definitely happen. I think in our schools, we typically offer the course 1 in semester 1 and course 2 in semester 2. And because that's what we're able to do. But theoretically, you're absolutely correct. A student and a school could offer course 1 in semester 2 and vice versa. Typically, we don't do that.
Or it could have a semester 1 and a semester 2, both, or a course 1 and course 2 both in the same semester, depending on the need of students. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had that. And related to that is, I'm thinking of students who may even have practical experience, et cetera. Can they test out or make a case, sort of a teacher permission? Okay, they actually know and have those course 1 skills, and they're ready to take on. Can do we allow that flexibility like we would in other
almost
courses?
Every single one of our classes across all of our curriculums has like a list on the prereq. It'll say like semester 1, and then it'll say or teacher recommendation. So there is a way for a student. I think the goal for the most part is that's a rare occurrence, but that the idea that being like that the conversation does happen with the teacher, and that a student isn't just placed in a course without having had that prerequisite semester. But again, in all of our curriculums, everything pretty usually much says teacher recommendation on top of whatever the prereq might be.
Great. I wanted to do you want to put me back in the queue? I have one more on the art.
I'll put you back in the queue. Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. And as the chair of the curriculum committee, I just wanted to speak up and thank the administration for the hard work that they did, as well as the curriculum writers. It's a big job, and then of course I wanted to also thank the curriculum committee. We had a very engaged committee this year. They truly made this a robust process. And we had a lot of folks with varying expertise and experience that really contributed a lot to the discussion here. I do want to flag the discussion on Alaska Native arts in particular for the art curriculum. As Ms. Devon stated, that was one area where we did have a lot of discussion. There was a proposal at one point to change the name of the course, and the curriculum committee found that overwhelmingly found that it was important to preserve that name as Alaska Native Arts, both to ensure that students could identify that it was focused on Alaska cultures. But the committee also recognized that the teachers were asking for flexibility there to introduce additional artists that might not be indigenous. And so I think that the result there was well done. It was a good, very responsive. The committee was responsive to teachers' concerns while also noting the concerns of the community, and that is exactly how this process should work. So I'm very proud of the work that this committee has done, the way that the administration and the curriculum committee were able to work together on these, and as well as the other curriculum that are going to be presented later on. And I think that's all I have to say. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. And we will go to Miss Carol Hubbard.
Thank you. Nice job. Really, really nice job. Thank you for spending so much time on it and for just for making it, well, your presentation makes it very clear for us, but it appears that you kind of cleaned up the curriculum. And I know that's really hard to do. I've been on the teams as the teacher, and it's like, wait a second, you know, so you really have to just boil it down to concepts, and you've all done a great job. Thank you for creating the 6th grade curriculum for art. That is, I think that's really important, and I appreciate that you did that. And the world languages, I love how clean that is. So, it feels like that's a curriculum that could be adopted if we get someone who happens to get stationed here from, I don't know where, they can adapt to, I mean, they can just, they can morph it to any language at all. That is brilliant. So thank you so much for what you've done. It's very much appreciated.
Mr. Dorn.
On the art, again, the high school one, I guess I do have some concerns on that third bullet. Alaska Native Arts is the course. And I appreciated the background conversation that Mr. Burgess was able to provide. But it is an area that's concerned. That does it get watered down? How does it get confused? The clarification should be there are Alaskan artists as Alaskan Native arts, and I would just that we the concern is that's a real issue in our state, and the state has tried to you know what tags you put on, and people who have tried to are non-Alaska Native putting their art forward as Alaskan Native art or as representing. And so my concern is the confusion that's there with this. If it's built in to do non-Indigenous Alaskan artists who are doing art, but it's not Alaska Native art. So
yeah, that goes back to what Mr. Burgess was talking about that you referenced, and that we mentioned before. That was a long conversation. Over 2 meetings at least. It was not a 5-minute conversation. It was a 20-minute conversation, and then a month later, another 25-minute conversation. And wordsmithing exactly the way that is phrased. As far as even using the word may or will or must. I mean, so there was a lot of wordsmithing based around that same idea that you just put out there. And in the end, what we ended up with was what the board curriculum committee recommended, and we did get, as was mentioned before, quite a bit of help and support from Mr. Joshua Peters, who's our A&A rep, and he really helped us get through that whole process. And in the end, he actually he couldn't be there for the last one, but he said, based on what I've seen here, is that he was very happy with where we ended up with. I totally understand what you're saying. We had a very long conversation about that in the committee 2 times, and that's where we ended up with. But I understand what you're saying.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. And Mr. Beam, we will go to Miss Charlie.
I just want to, I had talked to Josh about this, and he was updating me as you guys were meeting about this. Josh Peter is our IT director, but he was also an instructor at UAF for a long time, which is why I appointed him on this particular committee. And I just want to thank the committee for all of the work that they did going through this whole process. And talking to Josh, it was reassuring to know that not only him but other people on the committee had brought up the history behind the class, where it started at UAF with the late Ron Minook, who was an Alaska Native artist and master mask maker. And so I believe there was others on the committee who took his class and learned art from him. And yes, the focus is on Alaska Native, and there's artists highlighted on there who are not Alaska Native. And I don't think that this particular course or any of it is going to fall under that misappropriation of our culture. I think it's very structured that we don't have to worry about that. But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Miss Charlie. Mrs. Hardy.
Thank you, Miss Charlie, for that comment. And actually, piggybacking off of that, it was a question when I read the suggested artists. I had the benefit of Ron Minook taught while I was at West Valley, and I know he was. I mean, we named the art wing after him. He was an amazing person, and he passed during my time at West. And I was wondering why his name wasn't on the list of suggested artists.
I honestly don't have an answer for it. If it's something that we would like to add, we have no problem adding his name in there. It's totally fine.
Sounds like that would be a desire.
Be real supportive. I know Mr. Hensel would also be. He was a huge inspiration to him and his exploration of Alaska Native arts.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mrs. Hardy. Mr. Dorn.
Okay. I want to say thank you to Ms. Charlie for adding that perspective. That was really important. I'm comfortable. I just wanted the concern out. And I would say that's one of the real benefits of having you here as an advisory member, so that we can all grow and understand. And so thank you. I do have a couple questions in the world language.
If you can make them quick.
The so in terms of the elementary, on the elementary and middle school page at the moment, or in high school, with the elementary, the way it is set up, if a elementary school, for instance, wanted to do a language immersion, become a language immersion school, they could do that and approach that under what we currently have. Is that correct? From my understanding.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. Like what is currently adopted for elementary is just a guide for how you could go about teaching languages at the elementary. We don't have set like student learning objectives and course titles or anything like that, but it is just a guide on how you could, one suggested way that you could start to teach languages and what would be the appropriate kind of concepts to focus on at an elementary level versus what we do at the high school level per se.
Okay. And I think examples of that too, and relative to a comment that Ms. Maple made earlier, I know when our daughters were at U Park, there was an adult who could teach ASL, and they did ASL classes throughout the school, for instance. They also did it with Chinese, can vary. So I really was intrigued and impressed with the approach on the high school side. But then I got confused from the point of view that when I looked at the high school and your presentation of it, is it's really a world language course in between what that world language might be. And it's the same basically for all the courses. Obviously, it will change according to that culture, the language, the cultural references, the foods, or whatever. But it's, you have really one course. And then I got confused when the next page was a new course in Russian, but then the conversation about German. If it's the one course, really, you're just changing what language and the reference point is to it. What I liked about the presentation on structure change, and then you can explain how this works, is that it seemed to open that door where sometimes we have a staff member come on board who can teach something. They may only be able to teach it for a year, and they might be moving on or whatever, but our kids get that exposure. Or they do it for several years, and I'm thinking when Russian was taught before at West, because they had a Russian teacher. Japanese was taught at Lathrop because they had a Japanese teacher when they went. But kids got the benefit of it. So I saw the structure change really opening that door and making it a lot more flexible and much easier for schools to offer language. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe I'm not understanding this. If they have to go through a process each time for a new language, but it's the same course structure. So,
right. So I guess I would say that the idea behind writing like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 is that regardless of the language that's being taught, I would say it's kind of similar to what they did in art, where they said all of these essential skills we were copy pasting into every single class. It's kind of the same thing that happens in world language. Like you're teaching to the same like national and state standards in every single level 1 language course, regardless of whether you're doing that through Spanish or Russian or Chinese or Japanese. And so instead, and then we don't have the current teachers to robustly write a Russian 1 course specifically with Russian vocabulary correctly and what it even needs to look like. But we can say level 1 Russian should address these standards and these cultural pieces. And then we're not saying, though, that every language under the sun is a possibility. We are saying in Fairbanks, like, these are the ones that we will offer. And then just like in any curriculum, we also don't say every math class under the sun is an option. We say these are the ones we will offer. And then if somebody wants to teach a new course, we have a pilot process. And so when we say we added in Russian and American Sign Language and Koyakan 2, right, that those were needs that were addressed based on like the community survey and teacher feedback to have in our curriculum document. But none of our community survey and teacher feedback brought in like the need for German, right? So it wasn't any, we had no feedback that said, hey, why aren't we teaching German in Fairbanks? And so if our community isn't asking us for it, we don't want to it's that balancing act of, it can look like we have a super robust curriculum and look at all the things that you can do in Fairbanks, but if we never can teach them, then our document is actually not a very accurate depiction of what our district is doing, right? And so we want our curriculum to be a document as a whole that does represent what we're able to offer our students in the district, not a pipe dream, I guess.
And I would add, I think I'm going to take a stab at what you were asking about, is that we changed the structure to level 1, 2, 3, 4. What we're looking at here are new courses. So the courses now exist that we can still use that structure of Russian 1, Russian 2, Russian 3, Russian 4 if we needed to do so, because the structure of the curriculum exists. But now the courses are actually going to be adopted, and we can already do that. So if we do get a teacher who wants to come in and teach Russian, we have enough kids who want to do it, we can slide it right in very easily.
Okay, thank you. Follow up with it. Thank you for those. I would encourage that we look at ways we might even make it easier to take that structure and quickly be able to do a course offering, not necessarily as a pilot. And I'm mindful particularly of two things. One, we have some great opportunities with our J1 teachers who are coming from, and they're here for a number of years. Just because they speak another language may not mean they can teach the language. We don't assume that somebody who speaks English can teach English, and that's the same thing. But it opens a lot of doors, and that if they've been teaching Ghanaian, similar to we do English in courses, that opens doors for us. And so I'm just looking at that wealth of opportunity who may be here because indeed I know many languages go away because we don't have anyone who can do it. So
Mr. Doran, I'm going to ask that if you have many more questions that we send them in an email so we don't need to suspend rules and we can get to board comments.
Okay. I have one. Just to get the clarification in terms of archive courses, my question was, what is an archive course? And I just want to clarify, I think you answered it. It's just set aside, but at any time could simply be brought back. And all the school would need to do is say, hey, I've got someone who could teach this. You just bring it back. Okay.
It's kind of it's a new way we're kind of approaching. We started actually with science last year and archived courses that we had astrobiology and science. Nobody had taught it, right? We archive it, but if for some reason somebody comes back and is like, I can teach astrobiology, they can reach out and we can pull it off the shelf versus it completely being gone. So now it's listed in the curriculum document as an archived course versus it's just, you didn't even know it used to exist unless you had been here long enough to know.
Okay, great kudos on that because that was a real problem the last time world languages was before us and there were courses that were dropped anyway. So I'm really glad for this development. We don't lose those things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beam and Ms. Devon. That will bring us to our wrapping up board comments. If board members could try to keep them as short as possible so that we may get out of here and pay mind to everybody else who's still in the room as well. We will start down on Zoom with Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, President Burnett. So I just wanted to start by noting that the superintendent in his report tonight unintentionally, I'm sure, missed another opportunity to praise students in our district. Recently, we had several students from West Valley travel to Anchorage for declamation for world languages. So we had students from West Valley's Spanish and Chinese classes travel down there, and many of them placed in various categories. We had, and let's see, sorry, just making my count here. We had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had at least 6 students place. 2 of those students are actually my own. And a second place winner in Chinese poetry. Students who are actually living in my household, my stepson and my daughter. So just another an incredible accomplishment of our students and teachers. Just wanted to note that. I'm just teasing the superintendent here. I know there's so many great things that our students and our teachers and our staff accomplish on a daily basis. We can't get them all into a board meeting. So, but I do appreciate the highlight of our district's accomplishments and wanted to add one more because it's personal for me. Other than that, I also wanted to say I appreciate President Burnett's comments in her report tonight. I do think that when we have controversial and emotional issues like this showing up at our school board based on budget or other things, it can be quite contentious and it can cause divisiveness in our community. And that's been a huge concern of mine recently. And frankly, it's been demoralizing for me to see some of the comments. It's taking the wind out of my sails, seeing the divisiveness that is happening in the community. And that's not to criticize anyone for having their feelings or for coming to different conclusions than board members, or for board members themselves coming to different conclusions. That's natural, but I do think that modeling behavior on the board, and especially at the dais, is incredibly important for encouraging this community to come together rather than to be divided. And in light of what we are facing on the state and national level right now, I think it's very important for us to stay as united as possible in this community and in other communities around the state as well, and the nation. This service that we do is a way for us to preserve our community, for our community to take control, and for us to work together to come through challenges. And even when we have disagreements or when we have to make decisions that are difficult or unpalatable, I think it's important that we do whatever we can as a board to model respectful behavior, move forward when decisions are made, even if we're not comfortable with those decisions on an individual level. It is part of our board norms to respect those decisions and to be respectful of one another. And I think, I'm speaking to all board members. I'm also speaking to the community. I would very much like to see more unity in this community. And I would very much like to see people speaking up who do support the board, or who maybe understand even if they don't agree with our decisions. I also want to note that it's important for us to stay within our purview. And we have a job in front of us to make practical decisions, not political ones. So I just want to add that as well. And I'll end it there. But again, grateful to the curriculum committee and the curriculum writers for everything that was, and the administration, of course, for all the work that was done on the music and art. I don't think I can overstate that. Yeah, I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Mr. Doran.
Thank you. A couple of thoughts, starting with budget, and I keep being mindful of a quote that numbers are important, but what is good for students is more important. And that as we look at our budget, there are lots of different pieces to it and ways to a common end. And again, I'm impressed with a lot of the testimony comments, sometimes on budget, sometimes on other things related to the budget, but sometimes on, and I keep hearing the phrases of working together, what can we do to help, how do we solve things together, but a lot of those partnership sentiments that I think is really important, and that as we go through the budget, and I'm really thinking we have a 2-week break, sort of a mind break, but these will be floating around, so taking advantage of that, but thinking how we do look to say, can we problem solve different pieces of it collaboratively with the community? We have a lot of people who are willing there to work with us, and a lot of, from the district, from the board, willingness to work with them, with the different parts of the community. And that we really look at a budget that is pro-student. We have a real thing to look at, or what is our lens? Is it a lens of contraction, or is it a lens of growth, and where we can play with that in the realities of budget and revenue. So that piece, and then also related to it, but somewhat also a separate topic of its own, is the strategic planning. We are just about a month away from looking at the draft as a board and having a work session on it and good discussion. Again, a lot went into conversations about the draft, but I would also encourage us to look at both the current strategic plan and the proposed. And I think the questions that our current one has in it, mission statement, what is our purpose? The vision statement, what does success look like? And looking at the draft mission and vision with those questions in mind. And that when we come together, that we be able to look at that and also look at it in the context of the budget. And the budget in the context of each of these. Is that reflected here, and how does it guide our decisions for students? As we enjoy the next couple of weeks, to have a chance to also ponder these things, because they're not far away. I want to finish with some school visit impressions. What really stood out to me over the last 2 weeks of school visits, there's a lot of noise around us, around budgets, around executive orders, around all sorts of things that are coming. But wow, you walk into the schools, into the classrooms, you wouldn't know it. We know people are stressed. We heard some testimony tonight. There are a lot of different things at play for our educators, but they are so focused on their students and just doing in their work. It's not the job, it's their work, it's their vocation. And it's amazing, the smoothness, the calmness there, and doing what kids need. And that really stood out to me very impressively. Also, had an opportunity in some classrooms that I was in. I always have to smile when people say, we don't teach civics in school. And you've heard me before, and I won't give the full thing, but we start the first day of kindergarten as soon as they walk into school. But I watched a 5th grade class, and I was very mindful of this as we said the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty for all, as one of our testifiers tonight quoted part of the Declaration of Independence, all men created equal, and the students were talking about the Declaration of Independence. And they were studying it, doing some stuff, and then when they came out to questions, the teacher asked, what are the important phrases in here? And each kid could only give one. But what struck me is not only did they pull out a phrase and quote it where it was in the Declaration, they then put it in their own words. That is civics in action. I was in a high school class and they were going through the legislative process and writing legislation in different groups and working on it and stuff, and they shared some of their things with me. And I happened to mention, what is, this is civics in action. I said, you're doing civics? And one of the kids said, no. We're doing the social studies, and we're learning the legislative process and, government and stuff like this. And it was just, and then he was like, oh, yeah, this is civics. And sometimes we just don't understand. And it struck me that when we market our schools, one of the things is language that people do think of. Yeah, I never took a civics course, but I took U.S. history, or I took government, and these types of things. And then the last impression was, and because it did come up tonight in testimony, usually don't identify exactly because these things could happen in any of our schools. But I was up the university today visiting Northstar College, and one of the conversations is what they're doing to build community as a school within the university setting. And I wanted to highlight that because sometimes you have the impression, well, our students just go up there and they're scattered all over the place, taking classes on different schedules and stuff like that. They are proactively working as a school to also set their college. They're only the second year as a school, but they're building that, bringing the students together, making sure they have connections with each other that then does strengthen their college, university experience and will make them more successful later on. So I think that commitment that really all our schools do in building a culture that suits their setting, their community, and this is just one more example of that. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Ms. Maple.
All I want to say is that Mr. Doran, you mentioned the wrestling tournament at Tanana and how many people were there and how busy it was. I spent my Saturday there. I had tickets to the Fabulous Feminist fundraiser, which I did not go to because I was at a wrestling tournament until 10 p.m. And it was impressive that the school could handle that, and also incredibly stinky. And that is my closing comment.
Doesn't stink worse than hockey, Miss Maple. Miss Carol Hubbard.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I got to spend the day at Weller Elementary last week for the science fair. I got to partner up with a retired teacher from Weller, and we judged science fair projects, and we had so much fun. The kids are just so excited about their projects, and I learned a ton about black holes and about the brain. It was amazing. So that was super fun. And then I got to go on a tour of the school, and Mr. Doran is 100% correct. Those kids are engaged, they are busy, they are learning, and every classroom is different, and I had so much fun. And what a view they have. Oh my gosh, I'd love to have a classroom there. So Weller was super fun. And Northstar College, I got to go there for a presentation with Mrs. Julian, and the community there is fantastic. I have not been to the buildings that are all together, so that you go between those buildings. I didn't know that was there. I haven't been there it's been a couple of years. So they built all that since I've been gone. Anyway, love Northstar College, and I just want to say that I really appreciate all the emails that we're receiving, and just the testimonies from the students, from their parents. What an amazing program they have. So thank you, Northstar College. And I want to remind everybody, I'm going to kind of plug the fair just for a minute, because I'm actually running the education division at the fair again this summer. And so for the students who have science fair projects, please hold on to them, put them aside, and protect them, and bring them to the fair, because we need entries. And then if during the year, any of the students and teachers, please feel free to hoard things. If parents will allow it, but any kind of project, stories, papers, artwork. I mean, there's a whole art division. I don't do the art division, I do the education division. But if there's things that the kids are doing, and they just really just hit a home run on a project that they did, or they really had fun doing it, and they were really engaged, bring it in, please, because we need to show off to the community. That's our opportunity, kind of, to have all kids from all schools represented in the community, where everybody just comes and they just walk around and they look at things, and then I get to brag on kids from every school, even homeschools, and so it's fun. So keep that in mind. And I just want to also wish everyone a happy spring break, and I hope everyone has a great time. Thank you.
Mrs. Hardy.
I'll keep it brief. I want to thank the Region 6 Student Council for having board members there. It was a delight. I talked with Hutchison about our cell phone policy. They had lots of opinions. I talked to North Pole High School about hall passes, and they actually brainstormed with me, and they're going to bring some stuff to their administration of how they think they could help improve it in collaboration. And then I spent the bulk of my time with Effie Cochran students, and they are so in love with their school. They were enthusiastic. I learned about their leadership class that they get to take for credit that allows them to basically do student governance things within their classes. They talked about the native language classes they take in cooperation with the university. They talked about the MYO Olympics and how excited they were to be competing in there. And they had been pretty quiet the whole time. And once you had them on their own, they just lit up. And I was so impressed with just the love of everything. They said that it was this place that just made them feel like home, and they couldn't imagine going to any other school but Effie. And so I think that sings a lot of praises. And they also said what a great partnership it was with FNA and how important that was. Their one biggest concern is busing and how they would really like transportation. One of the students spoke to me. He said he had to ride the city bus just to get to school, and that is really hard for them to be able to get students to attend. And that is another reason that transportation funding needs to be increased so we can bring back those services to a charter. And I did encourage them to engage with our legislature as students, because their voices carry a lot of weight, and anyone else that would like that type of service to be brought back so we can better serve that community. Other than that, I did get a little sneak peek when I was dropping off my students' artwork at the Up With Art show, which is going to be opening very soon. It's amazing. Go check it out. I won't be there when they do the announcements of the winners because we're traveling for spring break, but it should be at Pioneer Park in the Centennial Center up there in the gallery all the month of March, and it is truly impressive. Hundreds and hundreds of students have submitted artwork from across our district, and I am so excited to see the show in full.
Mrs. Julian.
Okay. Next year, my three elementary age children are going to be redistricted to a new school, and so this has been a really sad time in my house. However, last week as a parent, I decided I was going to try to turn it around. So I, of my own accord as a parent, not as a board member, called the new principal of their school. And I just want to thank them for taking the time to making me feel heard, and also for validating the concerns that my kids had about change. So I want to share that our educators care. We know this, but our educators, they care deeply. And I know personally how scary these changes are. I have 3 littles that are going through that right now. I want everyone to know that our principals have wonderful things planned for welcoming new students following the redistricting announcements. And I myself am working hard to find glimmers to help my very own children find the positives to build an exciting future to go to. I also want to say that it's also okay to be sad and to be scared.
I'll share one such glimmer though, because it made me laugh. And I didn't expect it. I took them to their new school, and through their eyes, they got super excited about the amount of paved sidewalks around their new school. Now, I live in Goldstream, where there are just dirt roads everywhere, and they are so excited to bring their scooters to school and ride them around on paved. And that's just one thing that, you know, I never thought that that would be an exciting thing, but it helped them go, wow, this is cool. So I'm going to talk about the budget a little bit. And I think I've made this pretty clear, but I'm really trying to approach this budget by prioritizing lowering PTR. And I know most all of us are doing that. But I'm trying to see if we can do that now with what we have based on a $60 million local contribution, the BSA at the 680 increase assumption. But then I'm really considering taking a calculated risk in not budgeting to supplement transportation costs. And if targeted funds come from transportation, and if they don't come through, if those targeted funds don't come through, then seeing where we can figure out in unexpected savings, perhaps from vacancy rates, and perhaps from maybe increasing enrollment in BEST to see how we could get to that 2 million. I really hope that we don't have to use reserves for this, but we know that that's a priority. So I've really been seeing how can we not increase PTR, at least at our elementary, and also not to the extreme at our middle school and high school. So I talked a little bit last night about budgeting vacancy rates, and I'm encouraging us to kind of looking at doing something similar. When we do that, it will increase transparency and also add more precision. And any opportunity to build more precision, I'm all for that, because I just think right now there's just too much on the line. So finally, I just want to state that I see this budget opportunity, this budget work, as a chance for us to build stability. We have heard that the morale is down, that people don't feel valued, that there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think that that's probably because there's just been so much uncertainty around our budgeting process. This is our 7th year. We know that our most important investment is our educators. And so I'm asking myself, how brave can we get in making sure that we are protecting PTR, which is really educators, to the extent possible as we go through this next budget process. So finally, I subscribe to the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, and although that's where I get my news along with KUAC, I heard through the grapevine, another reliable source of news, that our dear education reporter Carter is leaving Alaska later this spring. He's not going to get away with an Irish goodbye, so instead I'd like to send Carter off with a St. Patrick's farewell blessing. May the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, and rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again. Thank you for covering this board and the work of our educators in the district, and for uplifting those stories so that people can stay in touch with what's happening.
Thank you, Mrs. Julian. I'll echo those comments. Thank you for sitting here for many, many nights, Carter. It's been great. We'll miss seeing you around. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are now adjourned. You're good. I motion to